And get started with the meeting. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the following manner. The annual notice was forwarded to the Asbury Park Press and posted on the municipal bulletin board. All notices are on file with the planning board secretary. Fire exits are located in the east and west sides of the council chamber as well as the rear of the building. I would ask anyone with a cell phone or other device to kindly put it on silent mode for the duration of this meeting. And just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded by the APTV. And would you now join me in Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today is Monday, February 24th, 2020. Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton. Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton.
She's not here.
Yvonne.
Mayor John Moore.
Here.
Jim Henry.
Here.
Michael Manzella.
Here.
Trudy Syphax. Here. Jennifer Souter.
Here.
Alexis Taylor.
Here.
Rick Lambert.
Here.
Barbara Kissel is absent.
What's that?
Said Barbara Kissel is absent.
Right. Okay, can I get approval of the January 13th minutes?
So moved.
A second.
Approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, approval of the January 27th minutes?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
Oh, yes, Mr. Henry and Trudy Syphax abstain. Thank you. And the same for February 13th, Trudy Syphax and Jim Henry abstain.
Okay. And then the approval of the February 3rd minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain again.
And Trudy abstain. Thank you.
Okay. All right, the first application is Asbury Partners LLC. This is the Asbury Beach Club.
Good evening, everyone. Jennifer Phillips Smith for the applicant. My understanding is we're here this evening just to select the date for the next public hearing. My understanding is also that it's going to be March 30th and that it will be a special hearing
6 p.m.
at 6 p.m. March 30th, 6 p.m., and that it will be here in this room, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So my request is to be carried to March 30th at 6 p.m. in this room with no further notice. Along those lines, though, before you do, I know that there's a request that we bring back all of our witnesses, which we have put them on alert to come back, and they will be here. My question, though, is whether there's any particular area they should each be focused on. Not to get into large substantive discussion, but if there was a particular request, we'd make sure they were prepared for that evening.
Well, I can speak for the, my interest in architecture and with the facade design.
Okay.
So that's going to be the crux of mine. The deviation from the design standards and just the overall design of the building and the green wall. Understood. And also the landscape architect. Because one of my concerns is that the design of the eastern facade, there may be some landscaping that can be done on that side. So that's kind of what I'm talking to the landscape architect about.
And we'll ask them to review those areas.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can I have a suggestion?
Yeah.
We've got a full month. Why don't board members address an email to Irina of their concerns within perhaps the next week, and then have Irina send an email to both council. Okay. So that give them the general parameters, so that they're not just sitting there saying.
Just to be clear, concerns about why those witnesses are coming back,
Yes.
or
Right.
No.
or general concerns about
What
Well, I think
witness that you would like to have come back.
Yeah, I think we're having them come back for
And
specific
the general
reasons.
area that you would like to discuss
Okay.
with the witness, so that the witnesses can prepare.
Right.
Rather
Understood.
than come in cold.
right.
And then both sides will be ready.
Correct. I assume that would be copied to Mr. Lieberman as well.
Mr. Lieberman,
Right.
whatever goes to Jennifer goes to Mr. Lieberman.
That sounds good.
As long as it's not limited to what's sent to them. Other questions can be asked.
Well, yes.
I don't want to send them a list and say, well, that wasn't on the list. Can't
No,
ask
Right.
understood, Mayor.
Okay.
And by the way, Mr. Henry, you're recused on this?
Yes.
Okay, well, just for the record.
Yeah,
No, that's fine.
You're
No, I
in
wanted to put
discussion,
it on
huh?
the record that
Sure.
you participate in this discussion.
And the other point is that once we've discussed with the witnesses in question, that each of the attorneys will be given 15 minutes for closing statements. You don't have to use the 15 minutes, but you will have it available.
Understood.
Okay.
Once
you.
we recall the witnesses, does it open up the public
Sure.
participation?
You go through the whole,
Okay.
the whole, if there's questions from the public, based on if there's any new
Testimony
testimony
presented,
from the
yes.
witnesses.
But I assume that will be limited. We won't be
We won't be
reopening to everything.
No,
Beginning,
Yeah.
Only what's
only what's been testified to that.
at that specific meeting.
Yes, that's the scope of the cross.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, with that, then I request that this application be carried to March 30th at 6 PM in this room with no further notice.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
6 PM.
Yes, 6 p.m.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
again, I
Application
recuse
carried.
myself from this
Yes,
discussion.
and Mr. Henry is recused.
Thank you very much. We'll see you on March 30th.
Thanks, Jennifer. Great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Asbury Memorial Parkway LLC, 900-901 Madison Avenue, Block 603, Lots 3 through 9, and Block 607, Lot 8, SAR area. Major site plan for ground floor retail and 125 residential units across 2 buildings with ground level parking and amenity deck.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. Kevin Kennedy on behalf of the applicant. You will recall we were present before this board on I think it was November 18th, 2019, as well as January 13th, 2020. We have met, our team has met with certain city professionals, and we've met with some of the affected neighbors, and we've submitted revised plans. We're very excited about the project. As we've indicated, we are hopeful to have a vote tonight upon conclusion of the presentation. And just to give you a rundown of where I anticipate going tonight, I'm going to have first, with your permission, Walter Hopkins. Remember, he was sworn in as an engineer and a planner. I would like him to briefly testify as to some of the changes reflected on the revised plans. And then I would like to call Paul Guibault. Now, he has not previously been sworn. We'll swear him in. He is an architect, but he's also our lighting consultant. He will discuss lighting. And I think that there were some questions that board members had about that. And then I would like to briefly, Dan Contadori, our architect, just briefly describe some of the architectural revisions. And then I will just have Walter Hopkins conclude with his brief planning summary. So with that having been said, good evening, and I'll, Mr. Serpico, Walter has previously been sworn here.
Swear, please.
Yes, you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that you give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, and Walter, just, you were here for my introduction, so why don't you just talk about some of the revisions and highlight some of the, you were here at the last meeting and know what some of the questions and concerns were.
Sure. So since the last meeting, we met with a subcommittee of the city planning board and their professionals with regard to the streetscape, because there's a lot of discussion regarding streetscape. We believe that the plan that you see before us reflects what was discussed at that meeting. I believe it was actually the next day or within a few days.
Mr. Hopkins, just wait a second till she
Oh,
gets
sure.
the,
I'm sorry.
Walter, are these revised plans you testified?
Yes, they are.
All right, so let's, we should get them marked. I don't know what we're up to.
1 second.
I believe we're up to A3.
Let's see. My last notes indicate A2, so this
E3.
A3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the record, A3 is revised plans prepared by,
WJH Engineering, last revised February 3rd, 2020. And what I'm referring to now is a color rendered version of those plans.
thank you.
Okay.
So we met with the subcommittee of the planning board. It was within a few days that we met with the county, because if you recall, the streetscape along Memorial is under the jurisdiction of Monmouth County. We had a very good meeting with them. They were supportive of the plan and the concepts that we came out of the city meeting with. Not to bore the board with it, but the only requirements they had was that they were going to require a hold harmless agreement and basically a maintenance agreement that the developer would be responsible for all of the improvements in the right of way. Just, you know, for the board's just edification, just they were very cooperative with us. The county generally doesn't even like street trees in the right of way, and we're proposing a little bit more than street trees. So I'd like to congratulate you for that. And with that, we had some discussions with them with regard to plant selection. So there's been some concerns raised in Clark Caton Hints with regard to plant selection. I'm sure we can work that out, but this was thought through with the county, and kind of durability was considered. So we went back, revised the plans, and just, you know, one of the big things that we talked about last time was streetscape. So I'll summarize that as best I can. So the paver strip that was previously proposed along the street on Memorial has been replaced with a raised planter. So there's a small curb on either side, soil in the middle, and there will be shrubs and trees in the planter area.
How high is it raised?
6 inches.
Okay.
The sidewalk, so then we're working from the street in towards the building. We have the 4 to 5 foot raised planter, 4 to 5 feet wide. Then we go to a 8 or 11 foot wide sidewalk. So the concerns of the professionals and the representatives of the planning board was that we wanted to make this a little bit more pedestrian friendly. So we went from approximately 5 feet to 8 along the southern portion and 11 feet along the northern portion of the project. And that's a function of the distance that's allowed between the right-of-way and the building. Landscaping along the building's been pulled back a little bit, so that's also helped to make the area in front a little bit more pedestrian friendly. There's a 4 to 5 foot wide foundation planting area along the fronts of the buildings along Memorial. We also widened the paver area along the intersection of Bangs and Memorial at that intersection. And the side streets largely remain the same, 7 foot wide sidewalks along the buildings, tapering back to match with existing at the property boundaries. There's also a 4 to 5 foot wide grass strip between the street and the sidewalk, and then there's also foundation plantings along the building, along the side streets as well. Another concern that was raised at the last planning board meeting was the curb cuts and the amount of parking that exists versus how many spaces will be available. And I'm happy to report that there'll be a net increase of 6 parking spaces along here. And that really is along the northern portion where we picked that up, because as board members will probably recall, there was a big building there with a very large curb cut. Now, what we did also in response to discussions at the last meeting, those 6 additional spaces do not include the loading area, and do not include the little trash areas that we discussed, area that would allow for trash to be removed. So it is truly 6 additional spaces that will be provided. You're gaining 6 on the northern portion of the project, and the southern portion remains the same. The other thing that came up was the refuse area with regard to the neighbor on the western portion of the project. What was done in response to that is the refuse area was moved again, either to the east. So now we're approximately 70 feet from that building.
Which building?
The building, lot 2, on the western property line along Bangs Avenue. There's other tweaks that we did to the plans, but that's really, I think, the majority of the issues that we've addressed in the latest set of plans. We did provide a parking exhibit and a site maneuverability exhibit, and that was what we used to demonstrate the additional parking spaces. Also on that exhibit, there was, I believe in one of the professionals' letters, concern about, or not concern, but they wanted us to demonstrate the maneuverability of the vehicles inside the parking area. And that's what you see here before you.
We need to mark that as A4 or 5? Or
Okay.
A4.
A4.
Just for the record, identify what A4 is, Walter.
Is a parking exhibit / circulation plan prepared by WJH Engineering, dated February 3rd, 2020.
So the trash service area, the cans will be put along the curbside, and then the truck will pull up into that space? Is that how that's set up?
So what's proposed are, I guess the common name is like a toter, so it's a really big wheeled garbage can. So they'll be pulled out to the staged area, and then the private hauling facility will come out and take those and dump them into the...
And that's that hatched area?
Yes.
Okay.
So back to the exhibit, this exhibit demonstrates that there's safe maneuverability, because one of the design exceptions that we have to request from your ordinance is the width of the driveway aisles. 24 feet is required by your ordinance. We're down to 22 in some areas. And what you're seeing there is a simulated car through an auto turn model, safely circulating both facilities. That's really it as far as plan revisions. We did review both your professionals' letters. With regard to the insight letter.
Excuse me. Why don't we swear in our engineer and planner so that they can engage in the discussion?
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And can you state your first name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Donna Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R, board plan.
Jason Fichter, F-I-C-H-T-E-R, board engineer.
Thank you.
Just because Jason's a little bit bigger, I'm going to address his letter first. It's largely the same as it was previously, and at the last meeting, I had indicated that we can address his letter. There are some additional comments at the end with regard to the raised planter, which we briefly discussed before the meeting, and I'm confident that we can work through with his office. We have a couple of ideas, just haven't had the time to work through them. And with regard to Donna, Ms. Miller's letter, again, very similar to the last letter. There's some discussion there with regard to the revised streetscape. I'm sure she'll have some expand upon what I'm talking about, but again, I think we're confident that we can work out the plant selection. There's some concerns about whether what we were proposing would be appropriate for the raised planter area. And there was also some concerns about drainage in that area, which again, Mr. Fichter's office raised. So I'd like the opportunity to work through that with them, and I'm confident that we can. The only thing that we would request is there was a suggestion in Clark Hayton Hint's letter about a soil cell. We've researched it. We'd like to try to find an alternative. It is a costly, I would say cost prohibitive measure, and we'd like to kind of see if we can address that through plant selection and improve drainage. But other than that, we can address both letters, and if the board or the professionals have anything specific in those letters, I'd be happy to address that.
So thank you for the revised, especially street and sidewalk plans. I think you addressed many of the board's concerns, so I want to thank you for that. I did have a question, and this may be outside your jurisdiction and therefore may fall kind of to the city to request with the county, but was there any conversation about additional crossings and or striping of Memorial Ave?
There was, at the direction of the subcommittee. I guess the concern or the preferred crossing area would be at Bangs. We discussed that with them. They had looked at that when they did the road diet, as they call it.
Yep.
And there's some ADA, some complicated ADA issues with regard to, I guess, there's some train mechanical things there. So they wanted to do it. We asked them to do it, and they said, we looked at it, and there's just really nothing we can do at this time.
Okay.
It's a shame because people cross there constantly.
That's what I'm told, and it seems likely, and the county's traffic engineer fully understood it, and you know, he showed us right where the problems were. He was well aware of them.
Right. I do remember actually Michael speaking to the mechanical things that would have to be moved there. And did it expand any conversation about crossing at Madison? I know their preferred is Bangs, but is there a possibility of a mid-sidewalk Madison Avenue crossing?
I think the receiving area over there might be.
And it's an entrance to a parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
I can help.
Yeah.
I have to be sworn in.
Yes, you do.
Can you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And can you state your name for the record, spell your last name?
Fuller H. Brooks, B-R-O-O-K-S.
Thank you.
They specifically mentioned the exit from the train parking lot was at that intersection. And they thought that they had looked at that, and that was the reason that they gave us that they wouldn't consider it, was the activity in that very intersection. So they just pushed back completely on it.
Okay.
They also try to limit the, you know, although we would like to cross at every intersection,
Right.
they try to control them, so.
Okay. Well then, maybe, thank you for asking. It probably falls to the city after this to put on any kind of follow-up requests. I think there is a possibility, since there already is an entrance and exit to that parking area, perhaps you could make that other on Madison Avenue more pedestrian friendly. I think there's probably gonna be a demand for it as you see a larger population there. And of course, my first concern is not how fast traffic can move on Memorial Drive. It's safe crossing, yeah, so, thank you.
Anything else on the board?
Yeah, just to have a quick question. I realize it's not part of your testimony tonight, but I asked a question before concerning the amenity on the east side of the buildings concerning the dog park. And you said that you would check with other municipalities to see how they handled that particular issue and the runoff concerning the waste and the runoff and being put into the storm sewer.
So we did check into that, and I can address that. We did. The landscape architect who's not here tonight, but who did communicate with us, has proposed, I believe, 5 of these. And good, bad, or indifferent, the issue has not come up with regard to pollutants. And we believe that it's really addressed on this one because it's on the 2nd story, and there'll be, of course, dog bags provided, and it'll be actually written into the rents that they have to pick up after their dogs. There's security cameras there as well, and effectively we're removing the feces from the contaminated areas. So although we can't remove both the feces and the urine, we are removing the feces, whereas if they were down on the street and this amenity deck was removed, they'd be on the street, and both the feces and the urine would be along the street.
Well, my concern is simply this, that, excuse me, this storm sewer goes directly into Wesley Lake. And there is a problem in Wesley Lake with the water quality that goes into the lake. And it's a short run to the lake from your development. And we're just trying to figure some way of short-circuiting that particular problem. Here we are, you know, we're taking runoff, directing it directly into the lake that already has a water quality problem that the commission is trying to abate, and this development is going to aggravate that situation and just make it worse.
Well, I would suggest that perhaps it isn't, that it might be improving water quality because these residents are going to be walking their dogs up there, and the feces won't be on the street, and that runoff that comes in contact with the feces will not go into the lake. It'll be picked up on the deck. Whereas in the street, we all know some people pick up after the dogs and some people don't.
And we're gonna have a management company also overseeing everything.
They will physically monitor it with cameras.
Is it, just an alternate suggestion, and I don't know how feasible it might be, is it possible to pick up the runoff from those two separate areas and put them into the sanitary sewer? Or would that bring too much additional runoff into the sanitary sewer that would create problems?
Well, I think you've kind of answered the question. We did look into that, and it's just impractical to separate, because it's on an amenity deck, to separate the stormwater runoff from the pollution from the dogs, from the urine.
I think Mr. Britz wants to.
We tried.
Yeah, I'd like to, we knew that this was an issue. So both Luke and I, he spent a whole Sunday, so we contacted 9 different companies that work with grass systems and underlying, we'll call it different kinds of soils and chemicals. So the chemicals got us concerned if we were putting something to take the urine smell out, that kind of thing. None of those people that we talked to had run into that particular thing where they didn't have an answer for us. There wasn't that we could go somewhere and say, we could buy this for $200,000 or $100,000 or whatever we could pay to get it. It wasn't available. It just didn't exist. There's filtering systems that can help it, but you have to be careful what you put underneath, because that chemical then goes in and goes into the lake. So we're really in a position right now with this project that we've designed it the best that we can. If it's a position of the board that it's an unanswerable question, then we will remove it from our application and people will take their dogs to the streets. That's basically, we're out of potential options to correct this. We really spent the time and the energy to try, and we don't have an answer. We just couldn't find it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Question for Jason. They show on the plans some on-street parking space striping. When you do resolution compliance, typically, if that's shown on the plans, would you expect that that's done?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would recommend.
That's part of, even though it's off-site, it's on-street, it's really part of the project.
Yeah.
Improvements.
Yeah.
So that is part of our review and part of our final inspection.
There are probably some tweaks then we need to make, just in terms of, I saw some of the no parking areas that are striped and everything are not adequate, so maybe can we put that as a condition?
Yes.
To review that plan a little further before resolution compliance?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. No problem.
I have one other thing for Mr. Hopkins. On the side streets, you don't have dimensions on the side. You have on the sidewalk, but not on the grass strip or on the planting areas alongside of the building. Just that's something that probably needs to be added to your plans.
Okay.
Just to, I think your testimony was that the grass strip is 4 to 5 feet wide.
Correct.
And that's on the curb side, and I don't think you gave us the dimension on the building side.
I believe it's another 5 feet.
I'm sorry?
But I believe it's another 5 feet, but we can demonstrate.
Well, it looks, from your drawing, from the scale of your drawing, it looks pretty close. Okay.
Minimal.
Can you help, I'm gonna make that a condition of approval, if it goes to approval, subject to the original blue plans, and what would that be for? I'm sorry, I was writing.
The dimensions on the on A5 are not shown on the side streets, on the east-west streets. The sidewalk width is, but the grass strip and the planting strip along the building.
And we would have no problem with that as a condition.
Thank you.
Another item in Mr. Fixter's letter that I don't think has really been addressed yet is lighting. There's a bunch of comments that more detail is needed or testimony will be given. And I don't recall if we had much testimony.
We'll have someone tonight.
Oh,
to
okay.
address lighting.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent point, and we'll bring him up momentarily.
Any more questions? Any questions from the professionals? Any questions from the public?
Walter, with
Yes, sir.
regard to Jason's report, anything that he's recommending, you're going to comply with?
Correct.
What it's about?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the public for this witness? Just come to the microphone.
Kathy Chamis, 930 Bangs Avenue. If I am correct, that you're not moving the trash area, you just moved the staging area, is that correct?
That's correct. The internal refuse area remains in the same location. The staging area for it has been moved to approximately 70 feet.
Why can the trash not be moved? That's about 15 feet from my front door.
That's something that is an architectural consideration.
And I'll wait and come back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have that answer for you.
Okay. We'll have the architect address it. Yes. Well, there's no time. There's no time.
Hi, Ernest McNolly, 400 Deal Lake Drive. So, I guess I'm here a little bit late, but I'm still stuck on the roof, and I heard you say that, in fact, what's happening with this project will improve the water quality in Wesley Lake, and I'd like you to explain that to me. And remember, I have a degree in biology, one of my degrees.
So with regard to the proposed development, rather than the dogs being walked on the street and the feces being deposited on the street, it'll be deposited on the roof area where it'll be controlled and can be picked up.
That's your answer?
Yes, sir.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a dog walk park and a park around the corner at Springwood? Why not what everybody else is doing? I mean, wait a minute, are you saying that this will be a trendsetter, and instead of dogs in Asbury, which there are a lot of them, they're better off pooping and peeing on roofs than they are on the street? And I'd like you to explain to me how that holds water. And I'm sorry, Mr. Attorney, I could see already you're ready for, that's not a question. What are you going to say now?
I can.
Yeah. No, I just kind of, I try and read your expressions before I get my.
Why don't you focus on the witness?
I will. Okay, if you let me, I will.
I'm not, you interrupted me, I didn't
No,
interrupt
I
you.
interrupted
Just get to your question.
Okay,
Let's
thank
get to
you.
your question.
So the question is, you will be, as far as I know,
I'm sorry I brought it up.
except for this being, it seems like it's the same architect that has to do with the pool, I think, and that he's referencing some developments up in Fort Lee, like the Modern and things like that. And he's saying, well, we've done it there and there and there. Now, we've asked you for a list of places where you've done this, and so far we don't have a list. But that's typical how it works here. You ask every 2 weeks, you're told we'll get you that.
Can you ask your question, please?
That is my question.
No, that's not your question.
How is this going to improve the water in Wesley Lake? And if you're going to stick with that answer, I'm giving you another chance. You're going to say because they're not going out like everyone else on the street along Memorial or wherever, that's going to help because what's ever going on up there. Will that be the way we're headed in Asbury, that eventually?
This is one development that they're proposing for this development. Don't try to blanket it as all developments in Asbury Park.
I didn't. No, I didn't. But you know what I've noticed from coming here for years? You always say that when you approve something, and once you approve it...
Ask a question.
Okay. My question is, why do you do that? You know you set trends here and precedents. If this thing goes as improving the area, then the next building will come along and says, hey...
Is this a question?
Yeah, that is a question. Why do you do that? Why do you...
Are you asking him a question about the design?
Well, how about I'll ask the both of you. Why are you saying this is going to improve discharge into Wesley Lake, which everybody knows is probably the most polluted place around. You can't even fish there.
He has answered the question. He has answered the question.
Now we're going to get the lawyers involved. Okay, so explain to me further how this is going to help Wesley Lake.
So again, I'll just repeat what I said before, and that's that this is a much more controlled environment where it's written into the rents and it's controlled. There's security cameras that can monitor, and the people are expected to pick up after their dogs.
The people are what?
Expected to pick up after their dogs.
They're expected to pick up everywhere in Asbury. You know how much dog waste there is in Asbury?
I've seen.
I know it's not a. So in other words, what you're saying is, because of the security cameras and the management, you're going to make sure that everybody somehow gets the waste off the AstroTurf. What are you putting up there?
Yes, that's correct. It's an
So
artificial.
the waste is going to go in the AstroTurf, and you're saying you have monitors who are going to come out and make sure it's all flushed out of the AstroTurf, and that any of the, what are you going to use to get it out of the AstroTurf?
So what I testified to was that the feces would be picked up, but the urine would not.
By the owner?
Yes.
Okay.
By the owner of the dog.
Okay, okay. And somehow they're going to get away to pick up 100% of the feces?
No, not 100%.
He's explaining the process.
Okay.
He's explaining the process.
You mean I should listen? Okay, let me listen.
He explained it. He said it twice already.
No, but he said, I said 100%, he said no. So I'm asking, what percent of the feces is it going to pick up?
I don't have that answer for you.
You
The
don't-
majority of it.
I'll tell you, even if it's 5%, that's dog feces. That's got disease and stuff in it. And
What's your next question?
my next question is, how are you going to get 100% out of the AstroTurf? Explain the process to me.
I didn't testify that 100% will be removed.
What percentage will be removed?
I just indicated that.
He's answered the
I
question.
didn't hear
We're
him.
going over and over. He's
What
answered the
no, it isn't.
question.
What percent's going to be removed?
I do not have that answer for you.
And you want an approval. You can't tell us what percent, you can't tell us the method, other than the owner grabbing a bag and probably schmooshing 10% of it into the AstroTurf. Who's going to get it out of the AstroTurf? And you don't have an answer for that, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're going into comments.
No, we're not going. Who's going to take it out of the AstroTurf?
He's already testified to who is going to pick up
Who
the
is
dog.
going to take it out?
The owners.
No, he said the owners is going to take out about 90%. There's going to be due in the AstroTurf. Who's taking it out of there? It's a simple question. You don't like the question. But then again, look at everybody. Well, you know, we got to put up with dew, stinky garbage,
What's your
everything you
question?
want.
What is the point of your question?
I want to
He's
know
asked the question.
who's getting the
He's asked
dew
question.
out of the AstroTurf. It's a simple
So
question.
I do have an answer for that.
Okay,
Good,
There
thank
is
you.
there is a
Finally.
procedure where the artificial turf is irrigated and cleaned, and that would go through a drainage system.
Then we go through a what?
Drainage system.
No, we're done.
No, we're not. Now watch.
No, excuse me.
Okay.
I'd like to remove the dog park from the development. We can no longer handle, we don't have an answer for 100% of how the dog feces is gonna get out of there. We tried to create something that would be great for the it's a dog-friendly town. I've had dogs here for
understand.
20 years, and we tried to create it. We're not gonna be able to answer all those questions, and we cannot continue to come back.
I agree.
And we're just gonna pull it off, and people will go down. and they'll
Respectfully.
Let their dogs go on the ground.
Respectfully, the public was asking a question, but I don't think the board feels one way or another about it, so.
Yeah, that's just one person's questions.
No, it's more than one person. A lot of people have asked, and he's been willing
Please,
to.
nobody's
Why don't you
nobody's
let him
talking to you right
withdraw?
now.
He just said he wanted
Nobody's
to-
talking to you right now.
Okay, yeah, well, I thought it's my time.
As the owner, as the owner's representative, I can offer to remove it from the plans today, because we need to move on and get this project.
That's fine with me. Okay, so,
I don't know
that's
if it's
that.
fine with me, and I think you're making an error, but that's your call.
Yeah, but why would you say that, Mayor?
I agree too.
Yeah, because
I think you're making.
we're going back to feces going straight into Wesley Lake.
All right, wait a minute. Wait a minute now. How many people are going to jump
No,
in?
no. Questions only for the witness. We're not getting into.
We're not having a discussion with you. This is a
Well, wait a
question
minute.
for the witness.
The
We have a
mayor's
question
just
for the
discussing
witness.
it. Didn't
What's
the
it?
mayor just said, I think you're making a mistake?
You're up there to ask a question of the witness. That's all you can do. We're not having a discussion with you personally. You can
Okay.
ask a question to the witness.
Okay. You're going to remove it from the roof? the project? No more rooftop
That's not my-
urinals?
That's not, he didn't testify to that.
Well, I thought the owner just did. Isn't this the owner?
That's not the witness. You can ask the witness a question. You can ask him a question. No one asked you a question either. You be quiet.
Now you're going to tell Rita to be quiet. I think you better think twice who you tell.
Pardon me?
Mr. Brooks will have to be available for cross-examination.
Okay.
As he testified.
Is it on the project or off?
It's not
Well, wait, let's.
It's not determined.
Hold on. Oh, well, let's procedurally get a hold of this. Let's finish with this witness. Then we can ask Mr. Brooks to come back.
I can come back
And then we'll allow
Thank you.
the question of him. But let's finish with this witness. Going back and forth. It's
I
not
know, it's ridiculous.
No, it's not. Well, wait a minute. Why would you say it's ridiculous?
Do you have a question for him?
Yeah, I know, but where do you get off
Do you
making
have a
those
question
comments?
for him?
Who are you to say?
Do you have a question for him?
Who are you to say
witness is
ridiculous?
now out of
You know
order.
what?
The witness is out of order.
Now I'm out of order. Okay.
Sit down.
Sit down.
We're
You're
on
out of order.
television. We're on television. You call me ridiculous?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any other members of the public who have questions?
Is there anyone else who has questions?
Of this
Well, just ask a question of the witness and everything's fine.
I beat Werner to the microphone. Carrie Butch, 500 Deal Lake Drive, and I, have done a lot of study about green roofs, and I think they're a really good idea. I think they save. I do. I'll ask a question. I'm prefacing my question. So, rather than use AstroTurf, could we use actual grass? That's my question.
I'm sorry, but that's an architectural consideration.
You don't know.
I don't have the answer to
Okay.
that. I'm
We can
sure-
address it when the architect's up.
I'm sure we do, but.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board, and everyone else. Warner Baumgartner. Okay. I'm curious about the process that was testified to. A meeting with a subcommittee to design things in conjunction with the county. There was testimony to that. I'd like a little more detail on that. Who did you meet with, this committee that you referred to?
It was the design review committee, wasn't it?
It was a design review committee. I don't have my notes from the meeting available tonight.
What's the design review
The
committee?
planning board design review committee.
I'm asking the witness. What is the design review committee?
The planning board design review committee.
Okay, and you met in closed session? Outside the view of public to do that?
We met at City Hall.
We always, the design review committee, it's just like the technical review committee. They meet with them outside of the meetings.
Okay, was the public invited?
It's 3 members.
It's not a majority.
Was it noticed that it was taking
It
place?
doesn't require notice.
Well,
Mr.
then it's
Chairman,
not,
was-
well, then it's not like the technical review committee.
It
Correct?
Specifically requested, encouraged at the
Right.
January board meeting that we perhaps meet with the design review committee to address some of the technical concerns.
Right.
Okay. And my question is, was that meeting outside of public view? Was the public invited or made notice that this meeting was observable?
There was not a quorum of the board present,
I understand that.
so that was my answer, I'm sorry.
That's not the answer.
No, it
Was-
was not noticed, probably. Irina, was
No.
it noticed?
No.
We've
there
never
was no
noticed them.
quorum.
It was not noticed.
No notice? Okay, thank you very much. That's what I was trying to establish. And then how did the county get involved with this as a result of that? Were they at this meeting?
No, it's a separate, as it indicated, there's a separate meeting, because we wanted to gather what the city's preferences were, and then take it to the county as it's their right-of-way, and my office requested. that
Okay,
meeting.
so as the applicant, you met independently with the county, and you met independently with a subcommittee of the planning board outside of public view, and then came up with the recommendations that you testified to?
Correct.
Okay. Now, specifically to what you testified to, could you put up the drawing there that has the color site plan rendering there? Okay, yeah, that's great. Okay. So this raised planting area, you testified that it would be 4 to 6 inches high, like a raised planting bed along the street edge, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's wherever that green band is in the diagram there, that's where those are proposed.
The green band adjacent.
Along the street edges,
Yes.
on all the
Yes.
surrounding. Okay. Some of those areas are parking areas, are they not?
I don't believe there's parking allowed along Memorial.
No, you just said that all the green bands along the street edges are these raised beds.
Along Memorial.
Oh, only along Memorial. Okay, so that's the correct testimony then. Only along Memorial are there green raised planter beds, okay. What are the green strips then on the other east-west streets? Are they raised beds or just
No.
flat grass then?
Flat grass and/or landscaped areas.
And/or landscaped areas. How do you differentiate landscaped areas from just flat grass in that diagram?
So there's symbols to represent plant material.
Oh.
So if there's a symbol, that's a landscaped area. If it's just a solid green color, that's just grass.
Okay. Can we be assured that where there are actual parking spaces, that there will be nothing but flat grass? Is that a certainty? Have the parking spaces been established as to where they will be in relation to what your proposed landscaping is?
Yes, the landscaping is proposed as foundation plantings adjacent to the building. The grass strip area as it is common.
I'm specifically talking about the area along the curb strip.
Yes.
Is this the definitive end result, absent actual lineage for the parking stalls? I don't see any lines for parking stalls. We don't know where exactly the...
That's the other exhibit that we had up before you asked us to put this one up?
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. All right, so we're assured going forward that wherever a parking stall is, where a passenger can exit a vehicle, that there will be nothing there but a flat grass strip.
Right, what I was trying to indicate was the landscaping is proposed adjacent to the building, the grass is proposed adjacent to the street.
Oh, I see, in relation to your other answer. Okay, all right. Okay, so there'll be no conflict of vehicle occupants exiting and stepping into flower beds?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, as far as the crosswalks, I was interested in the crosswalks last time, and I still am here. Would you agree as a designer that the design of a streetscape can direct people respond to the design of the streetscape in terms of walking paths? Correct, right?
That's a reasonable statement.
Okay. So my question then is, why at the corners where there is specifically no crosswalks, why do they have the appearance of places to cross? In particular, the most glaring one is Madison Avenue there. There's a large curve on the corner there, which implies that you're able to cross the street here, but yet the crosswalk only goes north-south. But there's a large concrete bend there, absent a planter, that kind of encourages people to cross at that location, and you've already testified there that there will be no crossing. What's the logic there of putting concrete at places where there's no crossings?
It's more of an architectural element to accent the corner of the building, and the curb ramps are directed at the Madison crossing. There is no curb ramp to direct people across Memorial Drive.
Oh, curb ramp, like a handicapped ramp?
Yes.
Okay. That's for the convenience of handicapped people. People that are mobile cross wherever they walk, right?
They tend to cross at ramps as well.
Okay. Don't they tend to cross where there's concrete that kind of implies this is where you cross, because there's concrete there? They certainly wouldn't cross a flower bed, or more likely not to cross a flower bed. Wouldn't it make more sense to extend the raised planter completely across that area to discourage people from crossing there?
It's something we could consider.
Okay. And that train of thought applies to the other corners also, where there are concrete curbs, but yet there's no pedestrian connection. It would make sense in all of them, probably.
If the board and their professionals thought that that was something, it's something we could extend.
Okay. All right, great. Was there any consideration given to a mid-block crossing in the discussions with the design committee or the county?
Yeah, I think we discussed that, and the county, mid-block referring to at Madison or mid-block, for example, between Madison and Cookman
Well,
or Madison and Banks?
Well, to answer your question, it seems more appropriate to go into the parking lot, right? To mid-block directly into a place where people park their cars, and the entrance to the transportation center tunnel is right there. So the southern block, mid-block of the southern block would seem to make the most sense, since that's where pedestrians would tend to go, to the parking lot and to the pedestrian tunnel.
I'm not sure there was a question in there, but if
Yeah, would it make sense to consider a mid-block crossing there?
We did discuss that with the county, and they weren't interested in entertaining that.
Okay, all right. As far as the northern property edge by Bangs Avenue, your testimony today and prior testimony indicated that there's railroad equipment across the street that prohibits a direct corner-to-corner crossing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was any consideration given to just moving a crossing about 20 feet south from there and putting traffic controls 20 feet further south to avoid that traffic?
If I understand your question correctly, that wouldn't be at the corner.
Exactly. It wouldn't be at the corner. It would be 20 feet, say 10 feet, whatever amount necessary to bypass the interference of the railroad crossing gate mechanism. Did you consider putting a crossing further south to avoid that obstruction?
So we just so you understand the process, that's a county right of way.
I understand. Was it considered at the committee level and presented to the county, maybe?
So just so you understand, it's a county right of way. So they determine. We ask and they determine. So we did. It's not a matter of whether we considered it or not. We asked them if there's any opportunities to provide additional crossings along here. And they said that they, specifically at Bangs, they had considered it when they had done the recent improvements and found it infeasible. And they also said that with regard to Madison, that they prefer not to have crossings at every site.
I recall that testimony. You just testified to that earlier. The implication by that testimony was that they only considered a direct corner-to-corner crossing. I'm suggesting and asking if as I said, a mid-block crossing or perhaps a offset from the corner by 10 or 20 feet crossing had been considered.
No, because it doesn't follow good engineering practice.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? Motion to close.
Yes, twice.
Second.
Am I too late?
Roll call.
Motion to close. Public question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Rick, am I too late to ask?
What's that?
Am I too late to ask?
I can't hear
Am I too late to ask?
Can Jennifer?
No, it's too late.
Is it too late?
Oh. I just didn't know the timing. I'm sorry, because that's what I was trying to get back and forth, but I wasn't totally clear about the conversation between the planning letter and the responses. So you had said that there were some issues raised in the planning letter that you were hoping could be addressed between the, like worked out essentially. Could we just talk about them a little bit? I don't know if we were going to go over them more specifically, but it was the planter drainage and the plant selection. And you had referred to something that, I just wanted to clarify what's happening with the plant schedule.
Yeah, we're okay with all of the comments. The one thing that we just wanted to get away from and try to find an alternative solution, because it is cross prohibitive, is I believe there's a reference to a Silva cell. So it's a pavement support structure that goes under the sidewalk. And I don't know that it's been used here in Asbury, and it seems to be very expensive.
Okay, and I understood that point, but the comments regarding the plant selection for those raised beds?
Totally open.
So you're open to work?
Yes.
So was there an issue with the county? I heard a comment that there's some issue that I was missing.
No, so what I wanted the board to understand is we didn't just pick the least expensive shrubs to put out there. We considered ones that were hardy, and when we were discussing with the county, this is what we came up with. So we're certainly open to other suggestions, and we would want to run it by the county. I don't know that they're going to have a whole lot to say in the negative, because they seem to be very cooperative. But this is what we came up with. Unfortunately, Ms. Miller's office couldn't attend that meeting, so we were doing it kind of on our own.
And I think the point was, we would, as a condition of the approval, in good faith, coordinate with city officials and county officials to try to accommodate everyone as reasonably as we can.
Yes.
Oh, that's fine. That's what I just wanted to raise, that particularly the plant selection, because we were talking about having the, those raised beds, having the capacity to help with some of the drainage. It just, on a very limited basis, that it would be, that the plants would be suitable for that. So that was the only, the one primary concern there.
Totally understood. And we
So
would.
if I could get some better direction from the board members about the types of plant materials, because I know during the conversations, some of it was more also to help, you know, people in the streetscape feel buffered from the traffic. And so, you know, the shore juniper is really low, it's only gonna barely come up above the curbing. Were there, you know, is there something a little taller, something feels a little more screening that the board members would prefer, or do you feel that ground covers would be effective?
Yes, I mean, I think if the applicant's willing to work with that, work with the list in a combination of everybody, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that that wasn't anything I was missing in that communication. We're talking about the plants for that area.
Plants are fine. It's that self amenity that goes under that we wanted to avoid.
Okay.
And just a point of clarification, you're working with that, because I'm reading between the lines here that the county wanted something sturdy that would support snow salt, that would upstand any type of runoff from Memorial Drive. And I think that the direction of the board is that we would like higher plantings that could also fulfill those criteria, but that our interest is in plantings that would make it a safe pedestrian environment.
Right, and anything that's gonna be street side has to survive those conditions, whether it's the county right of way or the cities.
So with that knowledge, yeah, I think we would suggest taller plantings.
And just so so I'm correct in my testimony, it is 3 to 4 inches, not 4 to 6 inches. The planter.
Okay.
I didn't want somebody to pick up on that.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, should I call the next witness?
Yes, please.
There's no other questions from the board. Mr. Hopkins does have to be subject to cross for the limited purpose of what he just discussed.
Okay,
That's
so
additional testimony that if someone has a question about it.
does anyone from the public have a question for Mr. Hopkins based on what he just said?
Yeah, based on the plant.
Yes.
Based on the plant
Absolutely.
material selection.
Warner Baumgartner, Fifth Avenue. Would you consider curbside plantings along Memorial that you're testifying to be actually at least a foot high?
We've indicated a willingness to work with the city's professionals and any staff.
Yeah.
Okay, would you agree that taller is better, since it would obstruct pedestrian enticement to cross at those areas?
I think so. I don't want to hedge my bets.
Okay.
So
I think
the thing that's important is
Thank
that
you.
we want to make sure that
That's
what
all.
we put
I
there
think that's the board's
survives.
position as well, that we'd like to see taller plantings there, maybe like beach grasses or something that are more kind of indigenous or sand tolerant, within the public interest.
Byron Spignoli, 400 Deal Lake Drive. Is it safe to come up here?
If you have a question about his
Okay,
recent
you're not going
testimony
to
on
call
the
me
landscape
ridiculous
materials.
again, are you? Because I don't call you ridiculous, but I think a lot of things
Do you have a question
say-
about regarding
No,
the
but I want to
landscape
make a
materials?
statement, okay?
There's not- it's not time for statements.
Please ask your question.
All right, so here's my question. Is it the next witness that we're going to deal with the roof with the dogs and the urine? Is that true?
No, do you have a question for this witness based on this last testimony?
Okay. Did you say with your staff that you're going to withdraw the dog urine?
No, your question must be related to the landscape materials that he just
You
testified
have to
to.
ask a question relative
That was what
to
the
his
new
testimony about the
testimony.
plan.
You know what's interesting here? Look at
Motion to close public
No.
comment.
Not interested.
Yeah, thank you.
Motion closed.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's closed?
Yes,
Closed.
you may sit down.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Paul Gebow. And Walter will not go far because he's going to testify as a planner.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll come back. sworn in?
Sure.
Raise your right hand.
Sure.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Will you please state your name for the record and spell your last name, please?
Sure. Paul Gibault, Gibeault.
All right, Paul, so good evening and welcome. You've not previously been sworn. So
Correct.
just for the record, you're going to be testifying in your capacity as a registered architect who's also a lighting consultant?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And why don't you just briefly give the board some of your certifications and qualifications upon which you are going to base your testimony?
Sure. My name is Paul Gibault, Liberty Lighting Group. We're in Chatham, New Jersey. I'm a graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology as an architect. Been licensed for over 20 years with focus on architecture, obviously, but also with lighting design. I've been licensed for that period of time. I'm also a member of the IES of New Jersey, which is the Illuminating Engineering Society in New Jersey. And throughout that time period, been practicing both, again, architecture, specifying, selecting, and designing lighting systems. So,
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully request that the board accept the witness. Okay, so just for the record, you're familiar with the application, correct?
Correct.
And you're familiar with the plans?
Correct.
Okay, and why don't you please describe the lighting details, and you are familiar with some of the questions that board members have had?
Correct. We prepared 3 different lighting plans that were in your package. There are 3 distinct, generally, areas of lighting. So you've got the amenity deck, you've got the street lighting, and you've got the garage lighting. Those 3 areas, and it was a question from some of the professional letters, why not combine those plans? Those 3 areas all have full cutoff fixtures, meaning all that light is focused down to the ground. So in that vein, the amenity deck lighting does not spill over the amenity deck to anywhere else. The garage lighting, for the most part, stays within the garage. There is a slight bit of a spill that I'll speak to in a second. And then the street lighting is the street lighting. So it's streetscape, it's building mounted lighting required by egress out of doors from the facility. We've confirmed best practices for those areas to meet minimum requirements on the sidewalks, minimum requirements at the driveways into the garages, our best practices in the garage itself. We feel we comply with all of those best practices. There are really no areas that combine in terms of the lighting, except for two minor areas. One is obviously where the garage lighting comes out of the garage door area. That's a natural spill area, but that area is required to be a higher lighting level anyway for safety at the garage entrance and exit. The other place where the spill occurs, if you recall the architectural testimony, the rear of the building has some knee wall and soffit work done so that there's an opening, if you will, because the garage is ventilated naturally through the bottom of the building. So there is a small de minimis amount of light that comes out, 0.1 to 0.2 foot candles in those areas, just by virtue of being able to go through that opening. That is my calculation, irrespective of the screening that will be added. So within that architectural opening, there's a louver system going in that will help to mitigate some of that light trespass. And there's also plantings along the couple of landscaped edges that we have on that drawing that further mitigates light. 0.1 foot candles is de minimis, as I said. It is, in essence, a full moon light. It's very gentle. It's not an overly bright light that will cause any sort of direct glow other than a full moon, as I said. So that's the 2 places that would naturally spill out of the garage. And then, as I said, the last place to speak to after the amenities and after the garage is the street lighting. The street lighting is pole mounted along the street edge, and it's building mounted, again, where there's doors and where there's a couple of positions highlighted along Memorial Drive from an architectural standpoint. The professional letters had a question about removing the cobra heads, and that will be done as part of the project. The street lighting, from a lighting perspective, my pole mounts do what I need to do along that street frontage.
There are 3 Cobra heads along Bangs, along our frontage that would be removed, and there is 1 on Madison. And then further up on Cookman, there is 1, but it's beyond the scope of this project. It's two or 3 lots further up. So that's the proposed coordination between the street lighting and those Cobra heads. The spacing of these poles is in keeping with other redevelopments in town. It's approximately 60 feet on center. So that's consistent with other streetscapes that you have in town through the city. And I think generally we checked on those. One of the comments from the board or from one of the professionals was color temperature of the light fixtures themselves. The preference was for 3,500 Kelvin or 3,000 Kelvin. The landscape lighting on the amenity deck is already at that level. The parking garage is at 3,500 Kelvin, and we'll make sure the revised specification for the street is at 3,500 Kelvin. And I think that is pretty much
I have a
the
question.
overview of the lighting.
You said the open spaces in the parking garage on the street frontages have louvers?
Correct.
Are they vertical louvers or horizontal louvers?
They are vertical. And I suppose we have that detail. It was in your original package because I remember seeing it last meeting.
You say you're going to remove the 3, excuse me, you're going to remove the 3 Cobra heads. The Cobra heads, to the best of my knowledge, are to provide light for the sidewalk and the street, both sides of the street. You're telling me the lights you're putting in are going to light up that street, or we're going to have a dark street?
No, it will light the street. The Cobra heads are on our side of Bangs. And it's also Madison, we're on both sides for that 1 fixture. So we would be relighting both sides of Madison and our side of Bangs, which is more light than is there now.
So the light levels that are shown on that lighting plan for the street reflect the light levels from your proposed street lighting, no excess light from the Cobra heads, but that is what the final light level result from the finished product will be.
That is correct from the standpoint of our lighting, and then there will be other, particularly
as
on
far as the street lighting.
Particularly on Memorial, you'll get spill from other areas.
Can you, I don't know if you can see it or if you have handy in your notes, what is the average illumination within one of those side streets? So that we have a
sure
comfort
can.
level of what that is.
1 second. The calculation along Bangs Avenue was 3.5 foot candles average. Cookman was 3. Madison was 3.8. And that's Madison by virtue of we're on both sides. And then Memorial Drive was less. It was 2.6, but again, that's going to gain contribution from the train station side, which is not in that calculation.
Okay, if the professionals, I'm not an engineer, say that that's going to replace what we have now and make it either the same or better, I'm fine with it. Just kind of the first time I've ever heard this being done, so it's new to me. It's also scary to me, like, what happens when somebody hits one of those lights? Who's replacing it? You or JCP&L? Well, JCP&L isn't because they're no longer in the game.
I don't have an answer to that specific question. From a uniformity perspective, I can tell you these lights are more uniformly spaced than the Cobra heads that are there now. So that alone will be a better lighting situation than what you have. To the point of damage to the pole, I don't have an answer.
Well, what's the proposed agreement for once these are constructed? I mean, is it intended that the developer would continue to maintain the lights, or because they aren't a standard JCP&L pole, so it's not like JCP&L would accept ownership of them once installed. So I think it would have to be determined who would.
I agree. It would have to be determined. I mean, we specified a pole consistent with their pole design, so that could be a consideration that they accept it. But ultimately, the long term, I guess, we ask another.
Okay.
Thank you.
In your original design layout, it seems to me that there is quite a bit of overlap between, I'm talking about the street poles now, and especially along Memorial. Seems like there's quite a bit of overlap of the lighting generated by those poles. Is that really necessary?
So, good question. The original layout that you saw prior to this plan that's in front of you,
Okay, I
which
haven't
is,
seen this plan.
this has been revised and resubmitted, so you have this one as well. But you'll notice
Okay.
there's half as many fixtures along Memorial Drive. The first pass was simply to say, is there a higher level of design required? In coming back with the coordination with the streetscaping, we've now spaced these so that it coordinates with that streetscaping and, again, is consistent with other spacing of poles. So that did change between iteration number 1 and iteration number 2, but this has been submitted as you see.
Okay. And on the building, have the fixtures changed from your original plans?
No, in a couple of locations where the garage entrance, for example, moved, those were moved, but
Yeah.
they've remained consistent.
The same fixtures?
Correct.
Okay. And they just wash the building below the fixture and the opening?
Correct.
They don't spread light out towards the streets?
Correct. All the lenses are full cutoff, so they're facing down.
Okay.
They're not facing out in any way. It's not like a traditional fixture which has glass all the way around. That's not proposed.
And any of the other building fixtures, building metal fixtures, also they are shielded so that they go straight down rather than spill out onto the street?
Correct. Well, and we're using it for sidewalk, obviously. That helps contribute around entranceways and exitways to the building itself.
So that's pretty much taken care of by the street poles, correct?
Closer to the building, I would still want a little more light right at those doorways, and by code for egress, you'll need a light at exit doorways, so that's...
Yeah, well, you have a light over the exit doorway.
Correct.
But that fixture hasn't changed from your original?
No, sir.
And, it's okay. Okay.
But you're right, the majority of the sidewalk running parallel to the building is taken care of by the street lighting.
Okay.
Correct.
And how about on the, your architectural accents on the north and south end of the two buildings? How are they lit?
So anywhere that there's public art spaces that were called out, or the architectural accents up high.
Architectural accents.
In both cases, it's a linear fixture that is aimable and will be aimed specifically to light that surface, whatever that surface is. So if it's the art areas, we're using the same fixture as we
Okay.
are.
Are they going to be directed downwards to wash the side?
Correct.
Okay, and so there's no spillage from the fixture to the street?
Correct.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Don.
Can you just
Good.
clarify that? So the light grazing on the building
Mhm.
is pointing up or pointing down? Or does
Downward.
it depend?
Downward. They're all downward.
It's all down,
Mhm.
okay.
Now, some of them are taller.
But they're all
they're
really
taller
low intensity or
components
whatever,
of the
they're not
building, so
actually- Right. They're
down
hitting
to
the building, they're not washing out across
Correct.
the space, okay.
Correct.
So the louvers on the ground floor at night, if they're vertical, wouldn't that allow more light to escape if they're versus horizontal that are kind of aimed downward?
It's a screening effect either way from the light perspective, from the light's perspective. I think vertical does just the same as a flat horizontal louver. It may actually do a tad bit more, because if you had louvers that allow the mechanical, the air to breathe through that, and it's angled in such a way that the light might actually pass through it more easily if it was a horizontal louver versus a vertical louver.
Okay.
And the fixtures on the buildings, they're mounted at which height? About? Do you know?
They're at a couple of different heights, generally 10 feet by egress doors, 12 feet or just above the garage entrances.
And in your opinion, at that height, with the shielding that's on those lights, would there be any kind of point light that you would see as if you were walking as a pedestrian looking at it, or is it shielded enough that?
It's shielded enough from that cutoff angle as you're walking by that you
You won't see
perceive that
the
bright
source of light.
If you walk up
Okay.
right underneath it, obviously,
Right.
you would, but.
Okay. Thank you.
One other further question. You testified that the intensity of the lighting is going to be 3,500 Kelvin?
Color temperature, correct.
Color temperature.
Right, so that's just a change in the quality of the color, right? So the train station lights are very orange. That's probably closer to 2,700 Kelvin, something to that effect.
How does this compare with the, let me ask another question first. These poles on Memorial are similar in design to the ones on Springwood?
Correct.
And how about the color temperature?
I believe the ones in Springwood are a little bit off of the orange that you see out here from the train station lights, meaning they're a little bit cooler in color temperature. So when you go to a higher number, it actually is cooler in terms of how you reference that.
Okay, but you don't, as compared to the 3,500?
It's in a range between 3,000 or 3,500 because if it was much more yellow, it would be 2,700.
So you're saying basically they're going to be similar to what's on?
Correct. Right, and if it's a specification thing where we need to change that before final plans get done for resolution compliance, we'll
Yeah,
comply.
personally, I wouldn't want to go much higher than 3,000.
Right, and that's.
Any other questions from the board or the professionals?
You're not speaking to the green building narrative, but somebody else?
No, ma'am.
Any questions from the public for this witness?
1 second, do you mind entering that as A5, please, your report?
And just what is A5 for the record?
A5 that's on the screen right now is that's the street lighting layout for the project. Prepared by my office.
Dated, please?
I believe it was dated, my date was 1/29, what date is on that?
Thank you.
Resubmitted 2/24, it says.
224.
2/24 is the date on the presentation materials.
Oh.
So I'm sorry, clarify, is that the same as what's in the mode plan set?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, it's consistent throughout, yeah.
It's just that's tonight's exhibit.
Correct.
Okay, any questions from the public?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Werner Baumgartner. Explain this a little bit, just for my knowledge here. This is a top-down view. This is called a photometric diagram, correct?
Correct.
And it's a view from the top down.
Correct.
So the rings that are on there indicate the illumination level of the surface, like the concrete or the sidewalk, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the butterfly-shaped ones are the street lights that you're proposing.
Correct.
What are the round ones that are interspersed all throughout here, the small round ones? What are those?
Those are the ones either at egress doors, which are smaller fixtures, so the spread of light is smaller, or the architectural elements that I mentioned along Memorial Drive, where there's a similar type fixture, just illuminating a smaller area.
Okay, can we count those up and indicate like where these are all located? You have to zoom in, I guess, like you just did there. The little round circles, it looks like there's at least 24 of them or so. Maybe I'm
There's
wrong.
quite a few egress doors out of the property, yes.
Do we have an exact number? How many street lamps? Do we have a number for that?
Actual street lighting fixtures
Yeah.
are 20 are shown, approximately.
Okay, and how many over door / accent fixtures that add to that illumination?
I have another 20,
Another 20,
give or take.
not just 3 or 4 egress doors or entryways, but 20. Okay. Do you have a depiction of these lights? What do these lights actually look like? Do you have something of evidence that shows what these lights actually look like? Oh, there we go, great.
Yes.
Okay, could we zoom in into upper left corner there? That's what you're calling the street light, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that in fact the same street light that's specified in the Springwood Avenue redevelopment plan, which are all along Springwood Avenue?
It is equivalent to, correct.
Equivalent to, but not the same.
It's the same, it's a very similar design, and it's a very similar performance output.
Okay.
It's not the exact same manufacturer.
Okay, why is that? This is a unified redevelopment area. Why is it not the same public fixture?
Different manufacturers make nearly the same product, is all I can say.
Who specified that as being the public fixture?
It's a fixture that we've had approved at other locations that have both utility fixture and private fixture on the same site. It's a similar design.
Okay, well this is a designated redevelopment area, is it not? With a streetscape design, correct?
I guess that's the case.
Yes.
So why is the designated streetscape fixture for that development area not being used?
I will tell you it's nearly identical performance-wise and nearly identical from design perspective.
Can I get an answer from the witness? I'm just asking, why is the designated specified fixture not being used?
Only because I don't represent the public utility fixture manufacturer. So I have best performance criteria on this particular fixture.
Oh. Okay. What's the one directly to the right of that box? What is that? Where is that located on the property?
That is a wall-mounted fixture. It has light only coming out of the bottom, and it's located at various locations around the building.
Okay. Is that considered a full cutoff fixture or
Yes.
a fully shielded fixture?
Full cutoff.
What's the difference between fully shielded and full cutoff?
I don't know that there's really truly a difference.
Okay. Isn't one a lack of emanation of light in the horizontal versus a fully shielded lack of light being visible from the human eye?
Well, fully shielded then, no, it's a full cutoff fixture. It's sending the light downward. Will your eyes know that there's a light on? Sure.
Okay. All right, what's the one to the right of that? What's the next one in line there?
Slightly different shape, but it's the same type of performance. It's a
Could we zoom in on that while we look at the fixture there? Okay, I'm just looking at the difference here. It looks like the one on the left has a horizontal lens, completely horizontal, and it looks like the one on the right, the middle actually, has a slightly angled lens. So you're testifying that the one with the slightly angled lens just projects light straight down? How's that possible?
Because it projects straight down. It is coming out at a slight angle from straight down, but it is not emanating horizontally outward.
Well, there's a horizontal component to an angle, correct?
In that sense of what you see there, sure.
Okay. And the one next in line there to the right, what is that box?
That is the linear fixture that is proposed for the public art spaces and wall washing.
Okay. You had testified that for that purpose, the fixture would be mounted up high and shine down. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because it looks to me like this is a fixture designated to point up, the way it's pictured here. You're using it pointing down, washing the wall.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Can we look at the next one? Okay, what do we got there? Okay, that's the fixture inside the parking garage, correct? The one in the middle?
The round one in the middle, correct.
Okay, and what's the one to the left of it with the angled lenses?
That will be a fixture specifically over the garage entrances where I need additional lighting for best practice.
Okay, you had testified that the round fixtures inside the garage would spill light out of the garage door to provide adequate lighting. Why do you feel it necessary to add yet another fixture to provide more lighting at the garage when the light spilling out of the garage was testified to be okay?
The light spilling out of the garage was testified to as a de minimis amount, 0.2 or 0.1 foot candles. I need an additional fixture in order to bring that lighting level up to requirement.
Okay. All right, so it's a standards matter.
Correct.
Okay. And this particular fixture, this long one on the left there up on the screen, that also appears to have angled lenses, not horizontal lenses, correct?
That is correct. I'm lighting a larger area with the driveway.
Okay. So this light source will in effect be visible by the public, by pedestrians, the source of the light, the lenses.
For safety reasons, we want to make sure that that driveway is lit, correct?
Okay. Why can't this be shielded completely to just light the area desired instead of spilling light horizontally?
Only because it's a larger area at the driveway.
Can a shield be put on this to limit the light to just the sidewalk and driveway?
I'm sure it could be, yes.
Okay. And if we go to the last one, I think, on the right there, what's that?
Those two on the right are on the amenity deck. The top one is a bollard, which only lights straight down onto the walkways.
Oh, okay.
And the bottom one is what's called essentially a step lighter. We don't have any steps, but there's a low wall in areas that light will shine inward towards the building, not outward.
Oh, I see. That's a wall-mounted light that shines outward horizontally.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Now, for any of these, I noticed that there were no beam diagrams. For the two on the right there, it looks like there's a photometric, but I don't see any beam divergence diagrams. That is, how the light comes out horizontally from any of these. Do you have those available?
That's what's represented on my plans.
No, what you testified to is represented on your plans is the illumination level at the surface.
Correct.
Okay. There are other diagrams for all lights available that show how the beam angle of the light leaves the fixture. Do you have any of those diagrams?
I don't have them in this presentation, but I can provide those to the professionals.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. One more thing. As far as the color temperature, are you knowledgeable about what the color temperature specified in the redevelopment plan is?
In the Springwood redevelopment plan?
Yeah.
I don't recall off the top of my head. I did read through that and will comply with whatever that requirement
Okay.
is.
Do you have any knowledge of what the current lighting provides in terms of the Cobra heads?
It's more than likely a high pressure sodium or metal halide source, and it's quite old and not providing any sort of consistent light at all. So,
okay, all right.
No.
Do you think that lighting this particular project substantially differently than the property across the street that you had mentioned, the transportation center, is that good lighting practice to have two completely differentiated light sources in one field of view?
I think for color temperature, we would work with professionals to bring that to any sort of consistency.
Okay, thank you.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yes.
Thank you. Ernest Mignoli, 400 Deal Lake Drive. So for the expert or witness, so we're talking about lighting on the entire project, correct? You're the person.
Correct.
Is there lighting on the penthouse level up on the roof?
On the amenity deck, yes.
Yes.
Correct.
So in other words, the prospective owner, tenants or whatever are going to be using this rooftop. There's probably like lighting at night that they could turn on or activate, or there's automatic lights, correct?
It's very low level landscape lighting so that they can.
Very low level.
Correct.
Okay. Has there been any impact studies on light? I don't want to use the word pollution because not all light is pollution, but the impact on the surrounding properties of the rooftop light? I mean, so in other words, I drive down Memorial Drive all the time, and when you're coming south, now potentially at night you could see a building with a lot of light around it at eye level, but then also coming off the roof. So, I mean, is that?
The roof, the amenity deck lighting will not be visible from the street. It will be cut off before you see that light.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it doesn't, and it won't impact the neighbors?
No, for the same reason. Basically, the roof amenity deck perimeter will create a shadow out of those fixtures.
Okay, so there'll be no light coming off the roof that affects the neighbors or anyone driving on Memorial Drive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Another question about lighting. So, you know, living here 14 years, I drive on the road a lot, and my question is, does the county require any near proximity studies of lighting as it affects drivers heading north or south on Memorial? In other words, it seems like, am I correct, some of the driveways face the Memorial Drive? No. Okay.
No,
Okay.
not on this project, no.
Not at all. Okay. So, reason I was going to think. Okay, let me skip that. But the lighting in the front and on the city street, one affects a county road and one affects a city road. Am I correct? In other words, the
street lighting does, sure.
Oh, correct. So does the county require you to conform with any kind of light as to amount and intensity so that the people coming on a county highway are not sort of impacted by the light as they're driving? That's all I'm saying. Were you required to do like a lighting, like they do an RTW for traffic? Were you required to do a lighting thing for the county road to show them that, look, we're not going to shine lights in drivers' eyes as they're passing by? Because the distance between your project and the highway, people driving, what, 35 miles an hour? It could be startling unless it's controlled. That's all I'm asking. Did you have to do a study?
The study is what you see before you. The IES issues recommendations for roadway lighting, and we meet those requirements. We also would work with your professionals if there's a higher level or a lower level required.
All right. Oh, so that moots my question. You did the studies, and it was approved by the county?
The county, I don't know that they've seen a direct submission on this, but through your professionals, it's been reviewed, correct?
Well, wait a minute. The professionals are not the county. Well, it's just a simple question. Did the county review your lighting?
No.
Okay.
Not
all.
directly.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I think that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
Motion to close public comment. Question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next witness?
Can I ask one question?
No.
No.
You can. Go ahead.
The ground level lighting that you show on this plan here, does it account for, because you have 3 different plans for lighting, does it account for light from all 3 sources?
Because of the cutoff nature of the other 2 areas, meaning the amenity deck and the garage, they're not contributing to the street lighting plan.
So the point 1, point 2 we have on the western property line, that spillage we have over
Correct.
We'll get nothing from the amenity deck, or the street lights for that matter.
The amenity deck is shadowed completely by the building in that direction.
Yeah.
And the street lights, certainly on Memorial Drive, are completely shielded, and then it's just providing consistent lighting down those side streets, which is safety street lighting. So I don't know how you would cut that off further.
Actually, I have a question too. So, back to the street lights. So you said they're similar in design. Why didn't we just use the ones that are everywhere else?
Depending on the township and depending on the construction of those poles, there's 2 different manufacturers that basically do the same thing. I picked one over the other. I've done both. I've seen both.
Okay.
But in this case, I picked this one. Performance-wise, they're not really that different.
Okay. Anyone else?
The bollards on the amenity deck are the solar powered?
Correct.
Have a question?
I'm a little confused here. If you have lights out here already and they're working and you're satisfied, wouldn't you tend to want to go with the same manufacturer rather than going someplace else?
Well, the lights that are out here now are what's termed a Cobra head, so that's on a pole and it's a completely different style fixture. So for the new lighting that we're proposing on this project, it would all be the same style. And that's consistent with architecturally and in terms of performance, consistent with other redevelopments that you have in town. Just the only difference is the manufacturer, it's 2 different manufacturers.
But you're asking about the Springwood?
Yeah, like the lights along Springwood.
The fixture, you chose one, it's similar. We're not talking about the Cobra heads compared to that, we're talking about the Springwood
We're talking
fixture versus.
that fixture versus that fixture, they're essentially the same.
But you didn't want to go with the original fixture?
Well, it's not the original fixture. The Cobra heads are gone. So it's just a matter of the new proposed fixture.
Yeah, is
Go ahead.
no.
Oh, we have to wait for him to come up? He has to testify separate from, he
Yeah,
can't
yeah, 'cause
respond to
then
this
it
question?
gets with the cross-examination,
Okay.
it's real bad.
Okay. Okay, so you call the next witness.
Next. Okay, Dan Condadori?
I do. Daniel Condator, Condatore.
All right, and just for the record, you were previously sworn and previously credentialed, but just you're testifying in your capacity as an architect, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Swear in and you'll accept his credentials.
I think he was sworn.
I was sworn.
Yeah.
And now his credentials were presented at the last hearing?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So Dan, you made some changes based upon some of the comments expressed at the last public meeting, correct?
Well, I wouldn't say we made changes to the architectural building, but there was a request to see different perspectives and
Good.
things like that, so we're providing those.
So why don't you explain to the board what additional information you provided?
Sure, so, well, Jay can go to that first one. So here was a view in the original testimony that we gave. There were some questions about, this is the view looking at towards the east on Bangs. And what we revised here, or what we're showing is some updated screening. There's a transformer on the other side of those evergreens. So this has to do with, in the package we submitted, there was a whole bunch of, we updated images based on coordination with the landscaping that changed. So this is reflective to that. We felt it was important that we hone in particularly on this one because it was a matter of conversation during the last hearing. And this shows the change to screening the corner of the building where the transformer is with evergreens. And while I'm on this slide, I know it was brought up earlier, I can kind of address it. There seems to be like the question of where the trash room is located relative to the neighbor. I think want to make it very clear that this is not a trash area as you think of as an enclosed trash area outside of a building where you'll see a dumpster. This is an interior space that is closed to the public. No one can see it. You cannot see the trash. You will not smell the trash. It is vented through the building up to the top of the roof. So there's no way that any animals, there's no debris left around it. It's a fully indoor space, and the only time the trash ever leaves that room is when it's brought down the street where we relocate it, the pickup area, further away from the house. So I just wanted to make sure I put that out there for you. Another image that came up, question was on the back of the building where the garage area, the parking area comes up to the property line, and this is kind of that view, the perspective they were looking at where we have a low retaining wall. This is the louver or the screening that there was kind of talk about earlier. It's more of like a decorative type screening that is a little more open, and then we have that fascia. We feel like this is, there's several reasons why this design is moving this direction from a green standpoint, whereas we're collecting stormwater on the roof as to letting stormwater run into the garage area and then having to treat it and being brought into the system for water quality. Also, we think the covered parking setup also helps control the lighting and the sound within the garage area. If we did not cover this, this would just be an open parking lot with light fixtures, and there would be harder to control that and the noise coming out of here. So this is the perspective of the back of the building there.
That's covered, right? That there's a
there's a roof.
Right.
That's fully roofed, yes. And then you can see the building itself. The actual building is set back substantially from the property line. This is just a view pulled back from Madison, looking east. So as you work your way east, you can kind of just see the perspective. From this perspective, you see the treatment that we were doing on the front is similar in the back. It doesn't have the same depth as the front, but architecturally, we feel that we've carried the architecture on all four sides. And this was another requested image showing perspective from that vacant lot that is on Cookman at the back of the building. You can see the screening and then the architecture of the rear facade. Again, trying to bring some architecture to the front and to the back. So those are our primary updates. I mean, the architecture of the building itself has remained the same.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions for the witness at this time.
Any questions from the board or professionals?
Can we talk about the narrative, the green building narrative?
Sure.
Thank you for providing this. I see, I mean, everything's outlined that was done, and I just had a couple questions. So the individual meters, that's per unit?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a building management system?
As far as?
Is it all tied as HVAC? Are those meters tied into a system?
No, they're managed individually by the rental. I mean, there's base building systems for common areas that'll be managed, but as far as individual units, they're independent.
But those meters aren't tied into a building management system where, as the owner, can monitor the use or anything like that?
We haven't went that far with design, but that's something we can look into to monitor. It's a good idea to monitor the system that way, yeah.
I was just wondering, in part because it says can be more carefully monitored, I wasn't sure if you meant by the tenant or by the building, so.
But by the building itself too, yeah. They will be able to review the electric bills and things coming in and have a system to, check the status of things like that, yes.
Okay. And then you said there's natural ventilation in the parking and the residential units. Is that operable windows in the units?
We do have operable windows in the units, yes, that's correct.
And that's referring to the natural ventilation.
And then the natural ventilation is also a part of the green design for the garage, so we don't need to mechanically vent it.
Right. That's what I just wanted to understand if I was understanding your descriptions. And so my only comments are that I appreciate that these things are in here and highlighted, and I just would have been happy to see it pushed farther, that there could have been more brought into it.
Okay.
I think the project does a lot in general for the neighborhood, so there's a lot of positive things. I just feel like we have an opportunity to kind of push. I realize there's a design exception or needed for the green building category, so we can talk about that. And I mean, we'll talk about that when we talk about it later, but I feel like, it's good to have it recognized here. I just wish I had gone farther.
Okay,
in some of those areas.
appreciate that.
May I ask a question about, so this image, the aerial view from the east?
Yeah, I think we have that up front.
Yeah, it's the second one in the packet that you gave.
That there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and you testified to this, previously, but the kind of color treatment, I guess they're like fins, are they over blank walls? Are
Yes.
they cover blank walls?
Yeah, they're covered blank walls. There'll be a solid wall behind it, yes.
And I assume it's because there's like circulation there or something, or windows.
Yeah,
that
yes.
couldn't be.
Mhm.
What about this second story here? That's also a blank wall?
No, there is a unit in there. Its windows are facing south on the street.
Okay, so it just doesn't have windows onto.
Yeah, it doesn't have windows, yeah.
Memorial Drive. All right.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just a quick question. Any thought given to solar panels?
It's not something that, we put much consideration into. It's more of a cost and something I go talk to the owner about.
So you did not put, I didn't hear you say you did or you didn't?
No, we
Did
didn't.
not.
No, did not.
That was one of my points, was that the opportunities for renewables on a project this size could have been there's a lot of roof.
Okay.
A lot of roof.
Okay, any questions from the public?
Kathy Chamis, 930 Bangs Avenue. So I appreciate the testimony that it's vented, the trash is all taken care of, but the bottom line becomes also, I'm assuming we talked about again that the transformer is also at the front. So both this trash and that transformer, you realize are sitting at 15 feet from my front door. why can the trash not slide right on down and sit in the other corner of that garage?
We feel that for the operation of the building, that's the best location for it, and I really, when you're on your property, that could be an office, that could be any room, you would not know the difference from the outside. Only time there's trash that's coming through there is when it's moved to its location to be picked up.
Would you want to live in that property knowing that there is a trash, literally 15 feet from your front door, as well as a transformer that will also do noise? I get that we have screening, and when the greens go and it gets graffitied or it gets stuff stuck on it, again, I'm now looking at, I have both of those pieces sitting at the top of my house.
Mm-hmm.
Top
I
of my
understand.
house.
I felt that we did a strong job of trying to work with that situation and accommodate it, and I think we've done the best that we could there.
Again, would you live in that house or buy that house knowing that there's a trash collection less than 15 feet from your front door and you're looking at a transformer?
But just please, the trash is not being collected there as far
Sure,
as...
it's being collected there. It's coming down a chute and it's going into that room.
Yes, it's an enclosed room. I understand that. So that it's
So
not...
are you telling me, that, can you guarantee me there will never be cockroaches?
It's a sanitized, clean room. I don't...
You can't, so you're thinking this building is gonna go up and there's never gonna be cockroaches and there's never gonna be cockroaches in
Well, I
that
can't
trash?
say there's never going to be cockroaches anywhere. I can't make that
So-
statement, but
So, and they like trash,
it's
right?
advantageous for the building to maintain that room as a clean room, not just for the neighbors around, but also itself. I mean, it's not a room that is going to be kept dirty and let to waste. I don't.
Again, primarily, why does the trash sit there? Why can't the trash move together in the building? Why can't it sit in the garage and move to that end of the building? Why can't it move to that garage, other side?
What other side are you
If you
thinking
pull
of?
a picture of the garage up, and it sits up in that top right-hand corner, why
Sure.
can't it move to the top left-hand corner? Why can't
It's
it
outside-
be, why can't it be at the back end of my property as opposed to the front end of my property? So I'm at least separating what's sitting there.
I mean, I'd have to look at the rest of the building, but I mean, the vertical part of the structure is where we have it, and we have a unit back there. I mean, I don't know. There's something. I mean, something we could work on, but I just don't see it as it being an issue. So.
You're not living there.
No, I understand you.
So and I appreciate you've worked with me, but at the same time,
I don't see it. Even if I slid it in the back, visually from your residence, it's not going to appear any different. There's still going to be a wall there.
I'm not worried about the visual. I'm worried about the bugs. I'm worried about the mice. I'm worried about the rats. I'm worried about the smell.
Okay. Well, we can look at maybe sliding it if you need to.
And again, so I have both that and I have a transformer. Noise from a transformer, and just the look of a transformer, again, sitting 15 feet from my front door.
Mm-hmm.
It's all sitting at my end, at the front door.
Okay, I understand.
Just out of curiosity, do we have a break ground, a timeline from break ground to the time of first occupancy?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay.
No.
All right, I think they were my questions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Tracy Rogers Sewell. The question of the putting solar panels up, is that something you can consider?
It's something I can consider right now. We haven't fully engineered this building, so whether it's cost effective or advantageous for us, it's to be determined.
Would it affect, you think, the architectural design of the building or look?
No, it wouldn't affect the architectural design of the building or the look, but you know, you have to run a cost benefit to that.
Energy efficiency to, you know, probably selling it or doing whatever, or even passing it off to, when can those costs be talked about with the city to negotiate something?
I have no ability to speak to that at all. I don't know how that system works.
Anyone else?
Hi, Ernest McNolly, 400 Deal Lake Drive, Asbury Park. So, the expert witness, you're the architect?
Correct.
So, for the structure, can they leave the picture up? Thank you. So, you're the architect, so we can ask you architectural questions
Sure.
about the design of the building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
No,
I've
only
already-
to the scope of.
Only about the what?
Only, you can only ask questions based on the testimony he gave. Within the testimony that he gave, you have the right to cross-examine.
That he gave tonight?
Correct.
Okay. I'm teachable. So you said the garbage is going to vent up to the roof.
Correct.
That's going to be a pretty active roof up there. We're going to have dog waste, urine,
No,
garbage.
it's a different roof completely.
Different. Oh, it's a different roof?
Yes, there's a high roof. Remember, the green roof is a lower roof that's only 14 up the street, which you see along Memorial. I'm
Right.
saying it's going to vent to the higher roof up at the higher level.
How is the, I don't know what word to use, the garbage air going to be propelled up? It's heavier than air. It's going to want to stay down. How are you going to get
There's
it
a
to
fan.
go up? A vent?
There's a vent fan, yes, correct.
So there's something that pulls that air up?
Correct.
Good. And then when it gets up, out on the lower deck?
No, it's not on the lower deck. It's on
Which deck is it on?
the high roof.
Okay, it's on the high roof. Okay, and I think we established that sediment air is, or the particulate in it is heavier than air, correct? Where's it going to go once it's vented up to the, pulled up to the roof? Then where does it go? I guess.
In the air.
Who knows, right? In the air?
In the atmosphere.
In the atmosphere. No, it's going to go on the roof, and then when it rains, it's going to be washed.
Testifying, don't testify.
Oh, okay. Don't testify. Okay. All right. All right. So it's vented up by mechanical means, and it's going to go onto the lower roof, which.
No, it does not go to
No,
the lower
which roof? The upper roof.
I've stated it before.
I'm sorry. The upper roof? Okay. And the upper roof, I guess, is above where all the people live, right? Clearly?
At the top.
Okay. At the top. Okay, good. After that, we don't really know what's going to happen to all that particulate. Okay. At the closest point, the way you design the building, someone is in a home, whether it's the first floor, second floor, third floor, there's what, 4 floors? At the closest point, the unit that's the closest to Memorial Drive, how many feet from Memorial Drive is the closest unit that someone will be, let's say in their kitchen or their living room, be to Memorial Drive? Is that a 25-foot, a 40-foot?
I don't have the number in front of me. I would estimate it's 35 feet. I don't know. I'm guessing.
All right, so the closest unit to Memorial Drive is set back 35 feet?
Yeah, somewhere there.
Somewhere in there. Okay. The reason I ask is because the development just to the south of you, there's homes that are, they seem like they're 4 feet from the Memorial
Chairman,
Drive.
may I respectfully request that we address a question?
All right. Clarify my question?
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any concern, since that's a county highway, it's got a lot of traffic, you see there's buses and things like that, of the proximity of those front units to air pollution?
There's no concern.
No, it's nothing testified about air?
Not in the scope of his testimony.
Not in the
He's an
scope,
architect.
okay. Okay, so, okay. I can't think of a way to ask you a question about that you testified tonight, but I still think it's important. I mean, do you think it's important that the units on Memorial Drive, the way you designed this architecturally, are maybe a little too close to the noise and air pollution on the road?
don't even know how to answer that question.
Okay.
That wasn't
architectural.
What? It's not an architectural
He
question?
didn't testify to any of that.
I know.
just about
I guess
the
it's a
notice.
foreign question, right? To be concerned about those people that are going to be eating breakfast with buses going by.
That's not a question. And it's
That
not
was a
time for
question.
public comment.
No, that
This is
was
not
a
time for
question.
public comment. You can,
Okay.
you can have public
Well,
comment.
I
in a minute.
tried. Did you consider the fact, the way you designed this, that people are going to be so close to the commercial? And by the way, the train that comes, are you aware that the train that comes through Asbury is a diesel train?
That's not, this
That's
is not.
beyond the scope
Nothing-
of his testimony, respectfully.
Well, wait a minute. This is the designer of the building. When the designer designs the building, no? He didn't testify to that?
No.
Okay, we're only testified about the air from the garbage. We can't testify about the air from the
There was
street.
no discussion about the train.
There was no, just the garbage, okay.
Right.
And we established the fact that once the air is sucked up to the upper roof, we don't know what happens to it. Thank you.
We've established that. Thank you.
Motion to close public comment.
Thank you.
Question.
Second?
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Next one.
Any
I'd like to
other-
call Walter Hopkins back as our planner, round two. He was sworn earlier and accepted as the engineer and planner. Now he's going to present his planning testimony. Walter, you understand you were previously sworn and you're still under oath, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, just because the hour is getting late, do you have some information regarding the planning issues associated with this development and our proposal?
Yes, and I thank the board for their patience. I'll go through this as quickly as possible, and if I'm going a little too fast, certainly let me know to slow you down. There's several minor variances and some design exceptions required from your ordinance. What I've identified is with the northern portion of the project, the minimum front yard setback, you prefer to have 0 feet, at the building to be set at the property line. Along Memorial Drive, we have 4.7 feet, requesting a variance from that because there's a site triangle issue for site distance, so we're doing that to provide adequate site distance. There's also a maximum front yard setback of 15 feet. Technically, there's an area at the intersection of Bangs and Memorial that's 25, and that's simply just a function of the entrance feature at that corner. There's also a side yard setback of 6 feet that's required. There's 4.9 feet to Lot 2, and that's the area on the western portion of the project on Bangs Avenue. And again, I think what you've heard tonight is there's been plenty of testimony about the architectural requirement for that to be in that area. It also provides us the ample amount of parking within the building. There's also a minimum rear yard setback, which is 20 feet. There's 0.8 feet to the parking deck, to the parking area. It's over 27 feet to the actual building. So again, this is really to the parking area. There's many benefits to the retaining wall and the louver that's being provided there, as well as the canopy that's being provided to enhance water quality so that the rainfall, both snow and rain, don't hit the parking area. Now we move to the south. There's also a minimum front yard setback of 0 preferred. There's 1.3 feet along Madison, and it just couldn't work out with the architecturals due to the irregular shape of that lot to achieve 0 feet. Again, there's also a 15-foot, and this is similar along Cookman. You'll see that tucked back in there is a transformer that's 25 feet off of Cookman. So it's really not the building; it's just an area that was carved out to provide for the transformer. There's a minimum, what's being identified by your professional is a rear yard setback along lots 2 and 7, and that would be the western property line of the southern portion of the project. We have 2.7 feet. Again, this is to the parking area. We certainly wouldn't question your professionals, but during our design consideration, we assumed that this was a side yard, and it was designed to have 13 feet setback to the building, which would comply with your side yard, but it certainly is short of your rear yard. So again, this is a function of that canopy over the parking area, which collects the rainwater and provides screening. That's it for the variances. I'm going to go right into the design exceptions or waivers. Your ordinance requires 24 feet for a parking aisle. We have 22 in some areas, and we believe we've demonstrated through our exhibit, through the auto turn model, that vehicles can safely maneuver the inside of the building as well as exiting the building. There's a parking screening requirement of 5 feet, and that's been addressed certainly along the property lines with the addition of plant material, the louvers that you've heard a lot about, and the retaining wall. There's a loading area required. You've heard lots of testimony in the past about that. We've provided that off-site on both Madison and Bangs. We've been able to achieve that with being able to increase parking along those areas as well. There's also a really technical requirement that compact cars be used only if parking lots are greater than 50 spaces. We're exactly at 50, and we're using 4 compact cars, so it's really kind of a very specific relief that we're requesting for that. And we're doing it so that we can show compliance on that section of the project. There's also a 10-foot buffer strip that's required where commercial abuts a residential. And this, again, is due to the 3 frontages that each property has. We are providing foundation plantings and memorial plantings. We just don't have the entire 10-foot. And this kind of also contradicts with your ordinance requirement for a 0-foot setback. So it's kind of a nuance. Those are the variances and design exceptions that we've identified, and it's I have reviewed your ordinance as well as specific sections of your redevelopment plan, and it's my opinion as a professional planner that all of these variances and design exceptions can be granted because the benefits of redeveloping this property with both commercial component to it with the mixed-use development and the residential outweigh any detriment of granting these de minimis exceptions, as the property to be developed would be a vast improvement to the area. Furthermore, the developer was sensitive to the scale of this project. Your ordinance allows a much higher building that's being proposed here. I think what the compromise was is rather than going up higher, we have these minor design exceptions and variances. Furthermore, I believe that the proposal before you tonight advances some of the key purposes of your redevelopment plan. It caters to the needs of local residents by providing commercial space here. It improves existing facades. We've heard about the art and the architectural treatment that's being proposed. Restores existing sidewalks. We've heard a lot about streetscape and sidewalks being improved, and it certainly rehabilitates the area. As far as negative criteria with this project, as in my opinion, the variances are technical and minor in nature. There's no negative impact to the development with this application. And I believe that all of these exceptions can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not substantially impair the intent or the purpose of your zone plan, zoning ordinance, or redevelopment plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
From the board? Professionals?
Sorry, I said, my voice, I apologize, my voice is crazy. But the reason, basically you're saying the reason that you couldn't reduce the size to meet those setbacks in the rear yard is to maximize square footage in terms of commercial and residential. And instead of going up, you're just trying to maximize it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions from the public?
My name is Stephen Chamis. I own 930 Bangs Avenue. You testified that the front yard is on Bangs?
Well, there's several front yards.
Several front yards?
Yes.
You have no backyard? Just several front yards?
There,
and what is the property line on my property line? Is that a front yard? Is that a
I'm
backyard?
sorry, what was your address, sir?
930 Bangs Avenue, Lot 2,
I think he's adjacent to the side.
west of,
Where the trash and the trash.
Okay, so
North
that's
building.
4.9 feet. That's 4.9 feet.
is that a front yard?
No, that's between your property line
Yeah.
and the property is a side yard.
Where's the backyard?
So the rear yard would be along, if.
Behind the church.
Let me see.
Doesn't it have to be 20 feet from that property line?
It doesn't
It's not gonna work on
Sorry.
that screen.
Is it okay if I
Isn't
approach?
the ordinance-
Sure, make it easy, go.
So this is what's being, the rear yard.
That's it? Just where that,
Yes, this is the rear.
that
yard.
whole section there?
This is the front, yes.
What about Memorial Parkway? Is that a side yard?
That's a front yard.
And what about Matson?
Front?
You got 3 fronts,
Yes.
one side and one back.
2 sides.
2 sides.
So every.
Where's the second side?
Every street frontage is a front yard.
That
So-
doesn't make any sense to me.
That's
How
the-
can you
yeah, I
have
know,
3
it's
front
crazy.
yards?
That's the way the
That's how
zoning
lots
is
are-
zoned.
Yeah.
You guys zoned it like that?
You got, no.
That's
how
everywhere.
in New Jersey, you got 3 front yards.
Everywhere in New Jersey?
Because it fronts on 3 streets, yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Most municipalities put in their
Yeah.
zoning ordinances
Yeah.
that any frontage of a property that's on a street is counted as a front yard.
Yeah.
So for the 901, they have 3 front yards, and because of the way the property jogs, the property line shared with you
Uh-huh.
is a side yard. The
And
property
what is the
line-
ordinance for the space between the side yards?
6 feet.
6 feet. And they're at 1.9?
4.9.
4.9. So I'm losing a foot and a half.
Well, so, and again, part of his testimony was, part of the building
Uh-huh.
is within that dimension to the property line. Part of the building where it's the parking is only 1 story is within so many feet of the property line, but the actual rest of the mass of the building is set back farther. So yeah, in your case, the whole height of the building on your side is it?
So
is the
you're
whole
gonna
thing
put my
4.9 then?
building
Yeah,
in
no,
the
it goes
shade.
straight up.
Yeah.
It does go straight up. in
But
that
the
area.
other properties
Yes.
have the benefit of where it's just the parking, it's that 1 story.
Right. So my building's gonna be in the shade till about noon
Well,
to begin with. When that sun comes up over the ocean, it's gonna till noon till it hits any part of my house.
perhaps.
3 front yards. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Ernest Mignoli, 400 Deal Lake Drive. I think I live about a mile and a half from this project. I don't even know why I'm up here. So here's my question. You talked about a canopy for parking, correct?
Correct.
What's the material here? Is a canopy off the building? To cover the parking lot?
Correct.
What's the canopy made of? Who knows? Who knows?
Steel and concrete deck.
Wait, the canopy is a steel and concrete deck?
It's not a fabric canopy.
What?
It's not a fabric canopy, it's architectural.
Ah, it's steel and concrete?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's not impermeable to air, is it? No, I mean air, it's a parking lot, right? Garage?
Yes.
Okay. The car's in there running motors, right? Where's that air going?
Through the louvers. And
Through the what?
The louvers, the areas that were.
Do you have a picture of that
Yes,
canopy?
we do.
Where's the canopy?
There you go. So there's a short retaining wall. The louvers are what look like sticks, which allows for free passage of air. And then above that is the canopy.
I thought you said it was impermeable to rain.
Mr.
Are
Chairman,
there
I
openings for the louvers?
I'm just saying this is beyond the scope of his planning
Oh,
testimony.
no, okay.
Right.
Let me
Respect
rephrase
to
the
submit
question. Okay. His
His
the-
testimony was for the waivers and the exceptions, and so if your questions are related to that.
Okay. Is the canopy in any area, which we now, you taught me, it's a steel and concrete canopy. Is there any places where the rain coming down can go through the canopy?
This was not his testimony. He was testifying to the waivers and the exceptions. If your questions were related to that.
Wasn't the waiver, he said that it
It
wouldn't.
had nothing to do with rain.
Hey, I listened to it. He said that it would not
related
take
to
in rain.
setbacks. It was related to setbacks.
Did you say that it wouldn't take in rain that's gonna help so that the water?
No.
No, that was the other person?
He testified to setbacks for waivers and exceptions. If you have questions about his testimony to waivers and exceptions, you can ask them, but that's what his testimony was.
Okay, but I'm talking about the canopy now, okay?
But that wasn't his testimony. His testimony was for those setbacks. If you have questions related to the canopy setback,
But wait a minute.
from the rear yard or the
He's
side
not
yard,
asking for a waiver on the canopy?
yard setbacks.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what he
okay.
testified to. Do you have
Okay.
questions about setbacks, setback waivers?
Yeah, there's points, you're asking for a variance because you're going too close to the surrounding properties, correct? With the canopy?
Correct.
Ah, now we're getting somewhere. So, I guess 1.5 feet for what you're asking? Is that what you're asking for, 1.5 feet in certain spots? Near the homeowner's property?
Well, his is 4.9 feet.
Okay, and it should be what, 6 feet?
Correct.
Okay. So that's your variance. You want to encroach 1 foot and a little bit onto one of the neighbors, not onto his property, but in other words, your property is supposed to be 6 feet from his, correct? You want to have it before and change.
The building, not the property.
Okay, the building. That's what I mean. So that's your variance. And your reason for thinking that that was good for the area, I think you said, was that it'll positively impact. I'm just trying to figure out, how will it positively impact that homeowner who just was here? How will that 1.5 feet into his space, which he talked about the light and the sun and all that, and you said it will positively impact. What is the positive impact of taking away someone's light or whatever?
So there's a balance that the board gets to weigh, and the impact, the positive impact to this is that we're able to provide this canopy which will collect rainwater rather than let it hit the parking area. So it's my opinion that that benefit outweighs the any detriment of a reduction in the setback by 1.1 feet.
Now, you just said that the canopy's going to collect rainwater?
Yes.
Now, I guess I can ask him about that, right? Is there any spots in the canopy where it won't collect rainwater?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so it's solid.
Correct.
It's solid, okay. All right, I think that's it, thank you.
Hello, Warner Baumgartner. Are there any encroachments proposed on public right-of-ways?
No.
Okay. And what's the situation with the county right-of-way? Is there an encroachment into the county right-of-way, or is there a trade-off of property being proposed, as was mentioned at prior hearings?
There's no encroachment, and there's a dedication that's requested, and all of our setbacks are from that proposed dedication.
Okay. Could you explain that dedication, please? What does that involve?
Yes, it's a strip of land that the county's requested should they want to improve the road in the future.
To whose benefit? Is it property that's currently public that is being given to you, or is it your property that's being given to the county?
The applicant, out of the kindness of his heart, has agreed to dedicate this to the township, to the county, excuse me.
To the county.
Yes.
So part of the current meets and bounds of the property is being given to the county outright, or is it being leased to the county? How's that work?
No, it's being transferred to them.
Transferred to them?
Yes.
Okay, so that will reduce your lot size by that amount?
Correct.
Have all your calculations for requirements of floor area ratio or bulk or anything else accounted for that loss of part of the current boundaries?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I have one question. Your canopy that, Steve Chapman, 930 Bangs Avenue. Your canopy that's gonna collect the rainwater, that's not gonna impact my yard at all?
Correct.
It's not gonna flood anything, it's gonna be diverted to the sewer?
So we have a proposed underground detention system in the parking area, so it'll
Okay.
be piped away from you, in
Thank you.
fact.
Anyone else?
Motion to close public questions of this witness.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, my last witness is Mr. Tripp Fuller Brooks, just to catch up on a couple of minor issues. Tripp, you understand you were previously sworn tonight and you're still under oath?
Yes.
Okay.
Just wanted to, so thank you for the opportunity to speak here at the end, because I wanted to recap just a couple of things. First of all, regarding the lamppost, and it was well noted, we will replace it with the same lamppost that's on Springwood Avenue. It was the like kind, we can get the exact same kind. That answers that question. It's not an issue. One of the things that I know that is important to the town, and something that we've made sure to address, is the affordable component here. Hasn't been talked about a whole lot, as we've sort of gotten into the minutia of, you know, everything from lighting to, you know, to the materials on the building. But when we started this process, the idea or the concept of having the affordable units here was important to us, and they're here, and there's 25 of them. And so I think it's something that I wanted to just sort of bring us back to the spirit of this building. This was a building that could have gone 90 feet in the air and blocked a lot of sun, but we chose to bring it down, to limit the scale to really what's here. What may go on across the street one day on the city property is another conversation. But right now, I'm sorry?
What is the maximum height?
I think it was 8 stories, 90 feet.
No, I mean, what's yours?
Oh, I'm not sure. Dan would have to tell you that. 57.7.
Okay, great.
There was a question that was brought up about solar, so I want to address that next. We are going to be looking into that as we begin to do our, what they call construction drawings, when we start to take a look at how all of that works together, the metering of the units, and that's certainly something to consider. It's a really large deck area that we don't have as amenity space. One of the conversations early on was, do we want to put the amenities up there? Maybe you'd have a view from up there. And the decision was, no, let's bring it down more to the community. That was the purpose of the retail on the ground floor. And then just literally above that 14 feet, you have more activity. And so we actually will have, even with condenser units, a fairly large space. So that will be looked into, but at the time that we do our construction drawings. And we engage our MEP professionals to do that. And the last thing I had was, I stood up before, and I think some of it, honestly, is a little frustration with trying to get what we really felt was a dynamic, area-changing property. It's 550 feet across from the train station. It's the first thing you're going to see when you pull into town. So we really did try to take into account those aspects. We live here, we work here, and we wanted to do a good job. The dog park was something that we know that's not here. We have investigated it. The people that designed it have designed it for 6 other locations in New Jersey where they haven't had these issues. But I cannot have that be the reason why we don't get approved and move this along so that we can build the thing that we've been talking about for so long. That's our desire. So if there's a mechanism or a way that we can design this with the professionals or somehow try to keep this, I would like to do it, but I am unwilling, based on the owner's approval, to walk away from it if we have to at this point. But we are we're grateful for the opportunity to build this project, and we look forward to your vote.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board or professionals? From the public?
Hi, Ernest Mignoli, 400 Deal Lake Drive, Asbury Park. It's for the testimony right now. So, sir, does that mean that, where do we stand on the dog issue on the roof? Is it something that, I'm just, I'm not just, I'm a homeowner in the city, and I'm going on the record as saying I object to it, and you're saying, well, if there's objection to it, then maybe we'll just withdraw it so that we can get an approval. So my question is this. I'm only one person, but I know a lot of people have expressed concern about
This is
okay.
just your question from you.
You know I'm trying so hard. You know that, right? I am making an effort. So the point is, before the board now, for the witness, are you saying right now, if I ask you that you want to, I guess you're going to vote tonight? Is that it? Are you going to vote tonight for approval?
I don't think so.
Nobody knows?
No, I think
If we get to the end of the process, yeah.
Okay. So if there's even only one objection to the dog component on the roof,
So you're asking, is this the question
okay,
for Mr. Fuller or for us?
would you be willing to officially withdraw it to move forward for your vote?
I would like to work it out with the professionals to find a solution to the problem, rather than to just pull it off the table.
Okay, all right. That's, which is a little different than you said before, but that's okay. So in other words, there's a chance that they're going to vote and approve the whole project, I guess tonight maybe? Tonight? Is there?
Is that a question
Is
for
the
Mr.
vote coming tonight?
If we get through the process, yes.
Okay, if you get through the process.
If we get time
So,
to-
in
So we
other
would like your
words-
questions.
Okay,
Thanks.
my question is, to you, are you going to offer it to the board with not satisfying at least one resident of Asbury's concern about the dog on the roof, the dog park, or whatever it is?
I'm going to answer it this way.
Okay.
So the reason why the dog park is there is because the feedback that we received from potential tenants, and I've managed, I don't know, upwards of 200 units here in town, and talking to the real estate agents, was that dogs are an important part of any project here in Asbury Park. And so what can you do to enhance that experience? Not only having the ability to have dogs in the building, but wouldn't it be great if there was a little dog run outside? So that's what we did. That was the spirit in which we did it. We didn't think that there was going to be a technical question about it. It's done throughout the state. And what I've said here publicly is that we are unable to find a system that will eliminate the urine that goes through the system. That's what I said. So for us, we want to keep the dog park. That's our desire, to keep that. If it's a technical question that we have to supply a system that completely eliminates it, we don't have that answer. We can't provide it.
And can I add something?
Sure.
So the public testimony is for the planning board to consider. His application is submitted with the dog park. We listen to testimony, we listen to the public, and then we make a decision based on what we hear. So it's not a matter of whether or not he's going to remove it from the application. It's submitted as part of the application. We take into consideration what the public says when we make our deliberation and determination. So you can ask for it, but it's up to us to decide whether or not it's something that we want him to either remove or leave in the project.
Wait a minute, are we sitting in the same meeting? The
Yes.
gentleman stood up, the witness, and said, if we don't have a system, which he now said.
The application is submitted as is. And we
That's not my question.
deliberate on the application as
You talk
submitted.
over
We
me.
take into
You
consideration what
talk
your
over
comments
me,
are
but
and your
that's not my
questions.
question. My question is, did the gentleman stand up before and say that since we don't have a system, if it would mean that it can't go to final vote or whatever, because we don't have a system, then we'll withdraw it?
Well,
Now
that's
I'm
not-
up here to
that's not
say.
my
But he's
decision.
not, That's not gonna happen.
Wait a minute. I didn't say it's gonna happen. It's
No, I'm
what-
saying is the application is submitted with a dog park as part of the application.
So then in other words.
That is the application we're considering.
So what you're saying is, as the chairman of the planning board, is that you're gonna go with.
What I'm saying is we take into consideration
I'm
what the
aware of that.
application is, what the testimony
Okay.
is, what the public has to say before we make a deliberation. That's
You
what I'm
do
saying.
know, you do know that you're not the ultimate authority, that if you approve the dog run.
You have a question.
Can I finish? It is a
No,
question.
if you have a question, you can finish. But
Okay.
if you're just gonna sit
Are
there
you
and ask-
aware that if the board approves it the way you're presenting it, with not having a solution to the dog run on the top, that it will wind up in freehold? It's an easy appeal out to freehold. In other words, you know
Thank you for
that,
your
right?
question.
Mr. Chairman,
That's my.
Yeah,
Thank you,
you're
thank
threatening
you.
now, that's.
What?
That's a threat, please.
That's
If
a
it's
threat.
If it's a question,
Wait a minute.
Beyond the scope.
Okay.
Okay, so appealing something to freeholds is a threat? Goodbye, sir. You know, you guys never
Listen,
cease
you
to
know what
amaze.
we're not gonna put up with is confrontational, argumentative,
I'm glad you're on TV.
quarrelsome.
I don't care where you are on TV. I know, it's
So are you.
okay, I don't mind.
Appealing to freehold is a threat.
Stop. It's enough. Tracy?
Tracy Rogers Sewell. Mr. Tripp, working with the Affordable Housing Coalition, we appreciate the 20%. Question, workforce involvement, also with the solar and the project. What is your interest in having local workforce involvement?
I've always had it in my other projects, and I would assume we'd also have it here. I've always had it in my projects here in Asbury.
Okay, in the dog park, one of my colleagues wanted to say that she's worked with this, rather having artificial regular grass. Would that be an option? And also some type of, would that work, would that be a thought of with the professionals?
It's one of the things we're working through with the professionals as well. We take a look at it as we go forward. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a great component. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rita Morano, 8th Avenue. I don't know too much about this tonight. It was the first night, but it looks like this building's too big for the location. And I think I'm asking you as a taxpayer, which I am, that you give consideration to these people that live next door to this monster that's going up. It has too many problems, too many variances, and too many waivers.
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully, I think that's an important comment, but during the testimony or the public comment section, not the question section, if we could hold off on that.
Yes, thank you. If you do it in the comment section, not the question section. It's an important comment, but it's not the right time for it.
Huh? Finished. This building has too many problems.
Wait, we're not doing public comment yet, just.
It's not the public comment?
This is
not yet, just questions. No problem.
Okay, I'll sit here.
Any other questions?
Motion closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further witnesses. I have a 3-minute concluding
Sure.
presentation, but if you want to do that after public comment, however whatever the board's pleasure.
Do you have a preference?
No.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I
So you
prefer
want to
if
comment?
you
Okay,
can
let's-
go. Thanks.
go ahead. Now you can do your comment.
But, so, yeah, motion to open for public comment.
Thank you.
And
Time
time,
limit
yes.
3 minutes?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Yes,
3 minutes.
Motion for 3 minutes.
Motion for 3-minute public comment.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, just 1 minute, Rita, just 1 minute.
No. Rita Morano, 8th Avenue, Asbury Park, taxpayer, 57 years.
She has to be sworn.
I think a consideration
Yeah,
should be
she's
given.
testifying.
Wait,
I
sorry,
am, I'm
sorry, Reed,
talking, no?
you have to testify, you have to be sworn in first.
You have to raise your right hand.
You have to be sworn in first.
Oh, okay.
I have to
All
swear
right.
you, okay? Can you raise your
Go
right
ahead.
hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, now you can state your name.
Okay. Repeat. 504 8th Avenue, Asbury Park. 57 years in one house. I think you should give consideration to these people. I don't know them. I never saw them before. But this building it's got a lot of problems. I know there should be something built there, but not that building. There's too many problems to it. You're gonna shade the man's property, his yard. That's not fair. They bought those houses and they wanna live in peace. They don't want something like that next to them. There used to be, I think, a shopping center there, if I can remember correctly. It's been open land for years. But you should take consideration, that's what you're there for, the planning board, about the people that live here, and not the people that want to come here and build something like that. That's too big for the lot. There's all these variances they have to get. I heard variances tonight, and a waiver. No, that should not stand, I'm sorry to say. Like to see something there, but not that.
Motion to close if there's nobody else.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Let's move it, guys.
Can you raise your right hand? What's that one? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help
Certainly
you
do.
God? Okay.
So,
Can you state your name for the record?
oh, I'm sorry,
That's
Kathy
okay.
Chamis, 930 Banks Avenue.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm all in for the building, okay? I'm all in for the dog park, okay? No problem there whatsoever. I really struggle with that. Again, probably the closest line is mine, okay? I bought that house 13 years ago. I've had the door shot up by drug dealers. I've had crack smoked in my house between tenants, and I stayed there. I stayed there, and I improved the property. And now I'm getting crapped on, okay? I'm now gonna walk out a door. I'm gonna have trash 15 feet from my door, trash will be collected. I get it, it's vented. There's no guarantee who will sell this building or who will own this building over time. I have no guarantees. If I don't move it now, it will never be moved. I will never have control of everything, of anything on that building. And I came here in Asbury, my husband's been here since '96. We came here when there was nothing, and this town was struggling. And I owned on one side, and we bought over here, and I have stayed there through all of it. And now I'm gonna get crapped on. I'm all in for this building, I really am. We wanna come back to Asbury. We're now out of Asbury at the moment. We wanna come back. I'm probably priced out. And I won't live in that building because of the way this building, I will not live in that house now. That's no longer a choice for me because of what I will face. So, that's my comment.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Tracy Rogers, Sewell Avenue. I just want to say, if there's any way of moving the trash to the convenience of this woman, I think that's something that I think is minor in the scope of what some of the work that we might be able to do. I think a lot of people don't want to see a project ever infringe on anyone. There's going to be little challenges, and I think we can always work through them. Putting my hat on for the Affordable Housing Coalition, I think this will be probably one of the first buildings that's going to come out with a 20% set aside, which the city has been pushing for, and meeting the criteria. A dog park is an amenity, and we can work through that challenge also. So I just want to, say if we can get over these little hicks, I'm in for this project, and I appreciate on this project what people have put in, and thank Mr. Tripp. Thank you.
Hello.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Warner Baumgartner, Asbury Park City Historian. There's a fundamental problem with this entire redevelopment site, and that's the standards that were established for the property boundaries. A lot of these issues that have come up about setbacks and being too close to people's properties and lack of light and air could have been addressed by having appropriate standards to properly merge this development in terms of size and scale into the existing neighborhood, instead of treating it as like a block next to another block with varying success. So that's a lesson to be learned for the future in planning zoning. As far as this particular project, this is very ambitious, very, very impressive. Certainly not offensive at all. The problems I have with it are in the public domain. It seems to be that the lack of crosswalks is going to be a problem. And especially since a lot of the sidewalk design kind of encourages people to walk across the street where really you don't want people technically walking across the street. So you need to consider that and possibly redesign that. The other thing is the lighting. In looking at the lights themselves, not just the photometric pattern, the lights are ugly. Those little black boxes with the lenses in the bottom, certainly the applicant can do better than that. I can guarantee you, I know those lights, and they will create glare. They will be offensive and create spot sources of glare for every single one of them, in particular the big one by the garage. May I recommend like traditional gooseneck lamps that wash the building and light the area by reflected light, diffused light off the building, instead of this predisposition to be using commercial boxes with LEDs pointing out into space. Certainly would be more attractive and would be more appropriate. Aside from that, I can't critique this too much. I mean, I'm concerned about the public art. The light to be proposed at the top of the public art wall shining down, I can see that as being a problem too. Being that high up in the air, shining vertically is going to create a lot of glare, I think, unless it's angled so far against the building that it really doesn't have the desired effect of washing the artwork. I would recommend that that artwork be separated from the face of the building and backlit. That would be the most appropriate thing to do. So a couple of design changes I would recommend like that. Also, the green space along Memorial Drive, I'm not so sure that that's really the most appropriate thing to do. I would recommend a small fence high enough to prevent people from crossing at those areas, and then putting benches. I don't see any mention of public amenities like benches or bike racks or anything of that nature. And that space between the tree wells is perfect for public seating, for benches. So you might want to reconsider that also. Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
Yvonne Clayton, 908 Cookman Avenue. And I do have a couple of concerns, and the first is about spillage, light spillage from
Can
the
you speak up a
parking
little bit?
garage.
I can barely hear you.
Can't hear me? That's better?
Yes.
Okay. I have a couple of small concerns. The first one is the spillage of light from the parking garage through the louvers and the foliage. And I just want to make sure that we're paying attention to that, and that that light is not going to be coming through at a very high density. The second is the crosswalks. As someone who lives there, I can tell you that people are going to cross where they're going to cross. And they're going to cross at the corners, and it doesn't matter whether there are crosswalks there or not. So I don't know what you can do about it, and I understand that DOT said no, but if you can readdress it, I think it's going to be very important, because there's going to be even more people living in those buildings, taking the chance of crossing the streets without any kind of safeguards. But last, I do appreciate, I know at one point this building is going to be 6 stories tall. I appreciate that it's going to be 5. And I am very, very appreciative of the fact that you have taken into consideration the city of Asbury Park and the people who live here and are putting in 20% affordable housing. Thank you.
Hi, Ernest McNally, 400 Deal Lake Drive. Oh.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Ernest McNally. I guess now I can comment? Oh my, you know how long I've waited for this. Thank you. Huh?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think the project.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think the project, the building, is way too large. I think it's impacting the community in a negative way. I don't see any positives that you seem to be proclaiming, whether they're environmental, whether they're traffic, whatever they are. I mean, anybody can look at this picture and think it's like parking a huge building in a community that's got smaller buildings. This thing is going to dominate the neighborhood. And I've listened to a lot of people say it's going to enhance the area. This is built on a highway. I mean, look, it's too big. It's too big. It's got a lot of environmental problems. Me personally, I don't like the design. I don't think it's fits in with the neighborhood. I fear that if this is approved, it's going to set a trend for more of these in Asbury Park. Yes, this is a problem area, I know. But to take areas on Memorial that need development doesn't mean you have to accept something like this, which is just too big. And the other thing is, you talk about 25 units that are affordable housing. I'm going to guess that those units are going to be right on Memorial Drive. Now, I'm just going to guess that, because when I look at other developments on Memorial, when you look at where there's affordable housing, they're the ones right on the highway. So people sit in their kitchen and you can see cars going by and buses while you're scrambling your eggs. I don't think that's a nice way to meet apart. Does that mean affordable will be some of the penthouse units? I don't think so. So I think it ought to be considered that although this kind of sounds like, oh, look, there's affordable units and et cetera, it's too big. It's really going to impose on the neighborhood. It's going to impact people that have lived here for a long time and don't expect to have a shade umbrella over all their homes, right? It's not fair to them. And they shouldn't have to come up here and cry, you know, that this thing is going to take away their whole eastern view and put garbage next to them and more traffic and light. And who knows what the noise is going to be coming off the top of this building. It sounds like it's going to be a party place up there. And I've been in this chamber when you've turned down people's deck because you said, oh no, the noise impact of the neighbors. How do we know what noise is going to be coming off this deck, this rooftop?
Thank you.
That's my time. It went very
3
fast.
minutes.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Motion to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have any comments? No, closing argument, sorry.
Real briefly, the hour's late, and I totally appreciate all of your time, and I'm going to read real quickly. Number one, as indicated, Tripp lives here, he works here, he plays here, and he is part of the city. And there's a lot of emotions that get involved in the development process, and it's sometimes good to, you know, realize them and appreciate them from all sides. And on our side, the emotional issues are, one, we're just very genuinely excited about this project. We're also genuinely excited about advancing a project which overwhelmingly fulfills the goals and objectives of the amended Springwood Avenue redevelopment plan. And we've also got timing sensitivities, and as you know, this going through any application process, we have the privilege of having to meet with and or satisfy and or address the questions and comments of concerns of a whole bunch of different groups of people. And sometimes with differing philosophies. We've obviously have the planning board, we have the planning board professionals, we have the city on a certain extent, we have the county because of the county's involvement, members of the public, their comments and concerns are always important. We have other outside agencies, and sometimes it's easy. Everyone says we want you to do A, B, and C, and we can say okay, and that's great. God bless you. Sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes they say we want to do A, B, and C. Someone says no, no, we want to do D, E, F, and then sometimes someone else says we want to do 1, 2, and 3. So we have to coordinate that all, and as every developer does, and sometimes it's tough to do that because sometimes the agencies with which we need to coordinate only work once a month and only meet once a month, and sometimes the schedules don't line up. But it's the process is sometimes trying, it's sometimes time consuming, it's sometimes expensive, but it's a really good overall process, and it's a statutorily recognized process, and it's a process that's open to the public, and importantly, the process is a good process. It's what I spend my life doing, so I have to say that, and I not only do I have to say that, I really mean it. And why I think it's a great process is because it makes a great project even greater, and that is what I respectfully submit we have tonight. We came here tonight, or to our first hearing in November of 2019 with a great project, and you all as board members and your professionals and some members of the public had really some hard-hitting questions and comments and some really intelligent suggestions and changes, and I have to say a lot of those were good ideas, and they made the project even stronger, and they were sensitive, you were sensitive to what you have seen in the past, what you have approved in the past, what you have denied in the past, and what problems you've encountered in the past, and you've used that to your advantage to say, well, how are we going to deal with that here in this project at this site? I think that's a good thing. I think that's really a good thing. And we feel, and we respectfully submit, that this really is a truly awesome project. It's a great design. It's a beautiful design. I do think it's appropriately scaled. We are not maxing out the height. We're not maxing out the number of stories. And importantly, it's overwhelmingly consistent with the goals and objectives of the amended Springwood Avenue redevelopment plan. And that's what we have here tonight. And again, just real briefly, when I was reading some of the redevelopment plans and goals, the overarching goal of the amended Springwood Avenue redevelopment plan is the development of the avenue in a manner which protects and promotes the interests and meets the needs of local residents and businesses of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It also talks about connecting Springwood Avenue and other parts of the city and the surrounding communities by improving vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle circulation in the area. And it talks about ensuring a high level of architectural integrity, which provides for attractive and aesthetically pleasing buildings. We need some exceptions tonight. We had the testimony on that. We had the testimony as to what they were, the impact of the same, why we needed the relief, and testimony as to how that relief can be granted without causing substantial detriment to the public good. And that word is important, substantial detriment. And it's important for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's what a lot of the case law talks about, but again, the word is no substantial detriment. And to me, what that means, and case law suggests, that every type of development, any development, every development, whether it's a deck or constructing a subdivision, a single-family home or a mixed-use building, every development is going to have some potential detriment. Every development is going to lead to some change. Sometimes people don't like change, but the key is there substantial detriment? And I really submit that based upon the testimony and evidence presented, there is no substantial detriment here. And I think Ms. Chavez has testified, and we are sensitive to her because of her location, and I heard the emotion with which she just spoke, and I appreciate that. we would never do anything to intentionally hurt her. We think we've modified the plans to meet with her. We've met with her, or the developer met with her, and I appreciate her willingness to meet with us. And what I do say is our good faith and open door policy towards Ms. Shavas does not end tonight. That continues. Ms. Clayton had comments and concerns about lighting details. We certainly, as a condition of any approval, would work with the board engineers to confirm that there is absolutely no adverse impact with the lighting situation. So in conclusion, to my conclusion, I want to personally thank the board and the professionals for the detail in which you have scrutinized this application. That's a credit to all of you. And I know and I recognize that this same level of scrutiny goes through every single application. So for all of those reasons, we feel, based upon the testimony and evidence presented on November 18th and January 13th and tonight, we feel we've provided extensive and more than ample testimony to justify the relief sought, particularly in conjunction with the agreed upon conclusions. Agreed upon conditions. We feel that this is overwhelmingly consistent with the amended Springwood Avenue redevelopment plan, and we also think that, as Tripp indicated and as testified to and was much more eloquent than I could ever be, that we want this to be another jewel among the many jewels in the Asbury landscape. So against that background, I'm respectfully requesting that the board grant the relief. And thank you for the time you've given us, Mr. Chair.
Any comments from the board? I have a comment. So, the issue of the trash and the side adjacent to the property on the west. So I look at the plans and I see on Madison that you have a trash room adjacent to the lobby in both buildings. Is it not possible to move the trash down adjacent to that entry on Bangs Avenue to move it from that end spot further into the building? I mean, I'm not trying to slow up the development, and I think it's an amazing project, and I think you've been very sensitive to a lot of issues.
I don't know if I'm able to speak, but I can speak to that right now. Sure. So it's basically been in stages. So the first thing we looked at was the location and how we're handling the smell and everything else. And then the staging area, could we move that down? And earlier this evening, I can't say now because I don't know, but I mentioned to Kevin, to the professionals, it can be a condition that will fully explore the movement of that trash room with the professionals. And that's our intention. We certainly don't want to do that. We understand the issue, and we've been trying to work through it. This is where we've gotten to today, and I will look to have that moved.
Okay.
Just for me making comment, or discussing amongst ourselves, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
generally, yeah, yes. So I just wanted to say also thank you for everyone for the patience, because it's been a long process, and thank you to the public for coming and making the comments, because those pieces do make these projects better. And the affordable housing, having that 20% in here is a huge deal for the city, and thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure again that the part of the conditions does include something about looking through the opportunity at the CD level when you're doing the construction documents for the solar.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot of opportunities financially at this time that it could be a really good process. So I understand what goes into it, but I want that to be in there. And the other thing, I'm just going to reiterate again that because this is such an important project and it's on that sort of entry when you get to the transportation center and everyone will see it, and as future projects come along, just every opportunity to really push the envelope in terms of green building and having that opportunity. I think there are great moves in this project. I think there could be more done, and so just to have that, as we move forward, to consider that.
Sure.
And not to get the answer to that, you will work with our professionals to provide the bicycle racks and the benches as brought up?
That was really something that we brought up with the county, and so as we go back into the shrubbery or the trees or whatever, we can bring that conversation back
I
up.
could see, I wouldn't want bicycle racks on Memorial Drive, but maybe on the side streets.
Yeah, I think,
Right.
I'm sure
I think
we
some of
have
the
some
renderings
already
have
on the
that.
side. We have them on the side, we just
Yeah, the
didn't have any on
renderings have
Memorial.
Okay, well, I could understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Anything else? Are we ready to-
Jack, do you have a complete list of the conditions that we've
Yeah,
talked about?
I think I do. I mean, there's probably gonna be more, because today I do the resolutions, is make sure I get the input from both Jason and Donna. But the fact that you asked the question to Mr. Brooks and he answered, he should be subject to cross-examination, but only limited to that one statement about that he's gonna work with
Trash.
staff regarding, lighting and whatever else, the movement of the, trash room. So if somebody wants to ask a question related to
Does anyone have a
that,
question regarding that?
they can. Other than that, they can't ask any other questions.
Anyone in the public have a question regarding this statement about moving the trash? Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, may I respectfully request that with that, certainly we present that in good faith, but Jack, could we say that if we relocate it, no requirement for reappearance before this
Right.
esteemed board, provided that there's no change to the building and no new variances?
Yeah, the only thing is, the board, you're gonna wanna know where it's going, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, so the idea is the board willing to accept if it's just moved from where it is down, that's acceptable to the board regardless of where it is?
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's no reason to come back.
Thank you.
Okay.
No public question about trash?
Yes.
I thought that's what you just said.
Yeah. You didn't get up.
Only relating
To the,
his
to
test-
trash.
No, relating to his testimony that he is going to work with the board staff to move the trash room away from the property, to the west. That's you can wanna ask a question about that, you can. You can't ask any other questions, that will go way beyond the scope of that last
Of what he
testimony.
just spoke to.
Well, you know, it's a problem because.
No, it's not a problem.
No, well, wait a minute.
No.
You know what happened to the whole thing about the dog?
No,
No.
no,
Didn't
we're
testify
done.
to that.
We're done, you had your chance. We're
Is there gonna
done.
be any dog poo in the trash?
We're done.
Motion to close.
Okay.
Second.
Now, okay.
Take a vote and close it.
All right, so with every redevelopment project, there's always a standard set of 3 or 4 or 5 conditions that I added. So there'll be appropriately the other standard conditions that are involved in with the Springwood Avenue redevelopment area will be in this. Okay, very rudimentary. Okay, Jason's letter, compliance with all the items in response to Mr. Hopkins. It sounded like there was gonna be private trash collection on this. Okay. Applicant will meet with the board planner to work out the details of the type of plantings that are going to be installed, okay, or planted. Right of way, if any, and any encroachments, but I heard testimony that there are no right of way or encroachments, okay? There are gonna be planned revisions. One would be add the dimensions on A5 of the grass strip on the side street. Applicant will meet with the board planners to we're talking about the plan selection, sorry. The lighting, Cobra light heads are gonna be removed from the lighting plans, and the applicant will meet with the board engineer to make sure that all the lighting is proper, no spillage in that end, similar to the comments made by Werner. Something about a reduction of lumens to 3,000, you saw that, I heard that?
Yeah, I would say that condition would be, yeah, to keep the color temperature at 3,000 or lower where possible.
Okay, that's fine. The lamp posts that are gonna be installed will be the same as those that were installed along Springwood Avenue. Gonna meet with staff to possibly remove the trash room, further away from the contiguous property owner. And meet with the staff to possibly add, and the county to possibly add any additional benches or bike racks. I think it was Memorial, because I think the project already has bike racks along the side streets, is that correct?
Only at the very close
Okay,
to Memorial.
or wherever, okay, we'll do.
Yes.
So, and that's essentially what I have, those 12 or 13 comments.
What about the solar, exploring solar?
Oh, I'm sorry, that, I
How would we rate that
Sorry,
condition?
Well, that
that
it
was
would be investigated, that opportunity for solar systems would be investigated at the construction development, at the CD phase. I don't know how that works in terms of who, I mean, if it goes beyond the team, the applicant's team, or it's just how you find out what the follow-up is, I don't know.
Maybe it's a statement to the board planner saying that it was investigated and it was or was not found to be feasible? Is that enough?
With a reason why.
With the reason why?
Yeah, you don't want to.
They could call
It's investigated.
Sure.
I have to create
I'm
something
trying to
that's
throw something out here.
serious, that's
Yes.
just
Right.
not window dressing.
Right.
That the applicant will investigate the possibility of solar installation.
In good faith, absolutely.
Yeah, in good faith, and report to our staff. And let us know if it's possible, and if not, why not?
Right.
Fair to request a letter from an MEP engineer?
If that's what you suggest.
Thank you.
That's
think the letter
your
would be
area, not
appropriate.
mine.
Yeah, there's no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. And I'll develop that with both Donna and Jason.
Also, there was one, the final striping of parking spaces should be reviewed with the Director of Transportation or Director of Planning or City Manager.
My number 5 is not only right-of-way and encroachments, but striping.
Correct.
That's what I have.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve the application with those conditions.
Preliminary and final, subject.
Preliminary and final.
And variances and design.
Yes,
Got it.
correct. All of it.
Mayor John Moore,
Yes.
Jim Henry,
Yes.
Michael Manzella,
Yes.
Jennifer Sauter,
Yes.
Trudy Syfax, Alexis Taylor,
Yes.
and Rick Lambert.
Yes.
Application approved.
Thank you very much,
Thank
ladies and
you.
gentlemen, appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Look at that.
Anything else? Anything else?
I think that's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.